we hiked for a day or two all the way to the border of the Republic of Congo. We go into that territory, and as soon as we go into the town, we were met by the military, the camo outfits or whatever, and they have some AK-47s with banana clips. He was very coarse with us, and he didn't believe us. He's just like, he can't go into the Republic of Congo. They're not going to let him into the country, and you can't leave, and we're keeping you here. And the guys he had with him have AK-47s, and they're drinking. They're wasted on liquor. What's happening here? Because like they're sitting us down like criminals, and then he's like getting in my face, but he's saying no pope, no bishop, no man of God woman goes into that forest. What are you really doing? You're here for minerals. You're here for this. You're here for that. You're here to take our resources. And they're drunk, and I'm looking at the guy swaying, with the gun. And I mean, like, I'm gonna get dispatched here by some drunken soldier. I'm gonna leave my wife a widow and my children orphaned. I really felt like I was in prison.
All right, Dwayne Davidson, we're back to talk about the Congo finally. And I wrote down just a couple questions. I'm going to let you kind of go with how you want to go here, but I'm really excited, so I wrote down some stuff. How did you end up in the Congo? That's a big question that we're going to have. Tell us about your first trip there.
Yeah.
Why on earth did you go back?
Yeah.
When did you see something that began to change your worldview? I like that question. What are the living conditions like over there?
Okay.
In a different country, and what is it like coming home from there? I think that would be interesting too.
Yeah. Yes. So that's a lot there. Thanks for having me. And I haven't really ever been able to wrap my mind around this whole topic of Congo, and then like in a setting like this, made a couple little videos to try to describe the different trips that we've been having. We've been going there for 15 or 16 years now. It's 2024 right now, for reference. But the way I got there was I had come to Christ and given my life to Him in a radical way, and my wife and I were praying together, asking God for the next thing, because we were already doing a lot of outreach and a lot of evangelism in our church, and we'd also was with the singles group, and taking them out and doing different types of outreaches and everything, which we were really enjoying. But we really had a heart for to see the gospel go outside of the United States, and we prayed together at one point and said, God, we'll go anywhere, and we'll give our whole lives no matter what it is. And I know we had a lot of different mission conferences and different things, and I think those kind of prayers I think stimulate from somebody that carries a burden for the gospel going into all the earth. And the denomination we were with actually was conscious about that the word needed to go across all of the earth, because Matthew 24:14 obviously talks about the gospel of the kingdom. It'll be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come, right? So it's definitely part of our program for sure. And so after we prayed that prayer, we were big time into homesteading and living a more natural life without all the extras, the biochemicals and all the stuff that kind of drains you down. And I was so passionate about it that I was paying like double the price for my plants, my starter plants for my garden. And so I'm at this place, this big, huge organic nursery that's so expensive, but I didn't care, because I didn't want the garbage in it. And I was there, and I was looking through the plants and loading up my cart and everything, and then I just saw this lady over there, and she was kind of going through plants, and I didn't realize it, but she worked there. And she says to me, the Holy Spirit, I just felt the unction to talk to her about Jesus. So I just walked over to her and I said, "Excuse me, ma'am." I said, I'm just, I'm a Christian, and I love Jesus. And I said, "Do you know Jesus Christ? Have you ever had an encounter with Him? Have you ever?" And she just immediately, her whole countenance changed, and she's like, "Oh, I love Jesus. He's my Lord and Savior." And so from that point, she's like, "Oh, you're my brother." She's like, she's like, can I get your number? Can I, my husband and we're actually pastors. And I was like, no, it's cool. Won't you just give me your church information or whatever, and I wasn't really interested in, any being solicited or whatever. I didn't know what she was up to, but she's like, okay, well, here's my information and everything. And then she's like, what, you're my brother, come over here, I want to give you something. And I was like, oh, you don't have to give me anything. And she's like, no, I work here. She starts loading my cart up with hundreds of dollars of plants, and I'm just, what in the world is this? This is crazy, you know what I mean? She's just blessing me, and I'm sitting there thinking, and like, you're not going to give her your number, huh? And it's like, at this point, it's like, okay, this isn't normal. You're shopping at a place, that, each plant's like $6-8 or something. Really expensive plants. When you have a huge garden like I have.
Is it like tomatoes and peppers and stuff like that, or is it something else?
All of it, like everything from basil to tomatoes and peppers and everything. Like we grow big gardens, and we're laying stuff up. Sweet potatoes, even, you put slips in the ground, and we grow big sweet potatoes, and dry them out and eat them all winter long, and just all kinds of different crops. We got high tunnels and grow our greens and stuff. And just a real passion to produce a really high quality food. And this place I was at, they were very passionate. This family, they do everything well. And I at that point though, she started loading my cart up. I thought, well, this isn't normal. I'm like, here's my number. So I wrote down my phone number and gave her, my wife and I's contact info, and went home and kind of just really got busy, just kind of forgot about it. But then I got a call from this man with a really deep voice, and he's like, hello, brother, and he's like, it's just like this foreign voice that very pronounced, like I hadn't really heard that accent before, or definitely not very often, to the point, and I'm like, I like to hear him talk. I like the way he talks, and he started saying, hey, we have a little church, and we're from the Congo in Africa, and we're involved in local outreaches and foreign outreaches, and we wanted you to come to our church and like preach to us and tell us why you're going around Cincinnati telling people about Jesus. That's not normal. And so we want to know what happened to you that you would want to tell people about Jesus. And so I said, all right, yeah, I can do that, so we scheduled on a Sunday. And so every Sunday I was usually with our singles group. And so I had somebody else take that over, and I went to this place in Cincinnati over on the north side. And on the way there, I told my wife, I said, honey, I don't know what I'm feeling right now. I said, but I feel like our life's about to change.
Wow.
And I said, I can feel something's here, there's a weightiness to this, whatever's about to happen. And she's just like, what do you mean? And I said, I don't know. I feel like this is a moment. She's like, I feel that too. And we show up there. As soon as we walk in the door, there's this big board in the corner that says, preaching the gospel in Africa, Congo, and teaching about organic farming and gardening and all this. Like, it was just like this whole mission that they were getting ready to do to Africa. And it's this board in the corner. And then I looked at my wife and I was like, wow. And, and it was weird because like I immediately got flashed back to when I was a kid in the church before I was even born again. I recalled that I had stood up in the middle of a huge like revival meeting. They used to have revivals, when I was a kid, or not revivals, but camp meetings. And these camp meetings, they would just kind of go berserk, worship and praise and preacher after preacher, morning through late night. It was really intense services, and sometimes they get pretty bonkers. It could get pretty good. And I remember one time when the Spirit was moving there, I wasn't even born again yet, but out of the mouth of babes, I just came out of my seat and I stood up and I said, I'm called to be a missionary to Africa. And then I sat down. And then they're all...
How old?
Oh, I don't know. I was little. I was young. I couldn't have been older than 8 or 9. I mean, I was a little kid. And then they are all like, yeah, I praise Jesus, you know, and they rejoice in those types of things because they love, you know, lives being surrendered for calls of God, regardless what kind they were. And so fast forwarding back now, I'm like having that vision of me saying that, and I'm like, is this where those words come into, you know, real life? And then I start getting scared, you know, and then Darcy started getting scared. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, are we about to leave everything? Are we about to leave the United States, and are we about to go? You know, we prayed that prayer. Are we about to go? You know, and so it just became real at that point, and so I preached that day, and it was awesome. You know, we had a great time there and everything. But there was an evangelist that was visiting there from another church, and is a kind of a well-known church in the Cincinnati area. And he seemed to really enjoy himself, and he came up to me after and he said, "Hey, you know, young man," he said, "I just want to give you a word." He said, "You're going to go to Africa on this mission." And he said, "God has his hand on your life." And, you know, like, and he just began to speak over that trip and details of it and all the things that, you know, that were real. And I mean, I had not decided to go on anything, and I hadn't even mentioned it or anything of that sort. And so I definitely was like, whoa, this is
what you're talking about is during a church service. You went there to speak.
Yeah.
In Cincinnati, because the guy had called you when you'd met his wife.
Right. Yeah. And so the pastor calls me, and he calls me to invite me to speak, and because he's the main speaker. His wife's a pastor too, but he's like he's the main speaker, main pastor. And I go there, and there was an evangelist just visiting their church, and I don't know why I was speaking instead of him. I think he was more of a seasoned speaker than I, you know, but I definitely let go, you know. I like just kind of I yielded to the Spirit, and we had a good time up in there, you know what I mean? So it was like, it was good. It was a good gathering. And, you know, when he came up to me, I'd never actually been prophesied over in my whole life because I was from a denominational church at that point. That was my first time I'd ever had anybody like declare something over me that wasn't, because to me when he said that, it had no weight at all as far as like me understanding what was happening. To me it was just like, you don't know that, why would you say that? Yeah,
because you were probably taught that it's the Bible, you know, if you want to hear from God, read the Bible type of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. It's kind of like there's the Father, the Son, and the Word of God. The Holy Spirit is kind of not really, you know, part of that. I mean,
so you're probably like, you're hearing what he's saying, you're like, yeah, I'm really happy for you, thank you, you know, but you're not really receiving it. You're not used to hearing that kind of stuff.
No, I wasn't at that point, but it didn't last long, because now I'm thinking, you know, after it all happened, obviously I started looking back even in the church that I was from, and I had evangelists come in through our church and had stood up and said, "You're going to be the pastor of this church." And I told him he was going to be the pastor, which was he was assistant pastor, and now he was the pastor. He said, "Now I'm telling you, you're going to be the pastor." He was looking at some man in the audience, and I'm thinking, like, you guys are the same age as this guy about to die. You know what I mean? Like, how's he going to be you know what I mean? Before it made sense, because there was like a very old senior pastor and then a younger assistant pastor. Of course, you're going to be the pastor. That's just common sense. But now, this man of God that's moving through, he's speaking something that it was like, we were all like confused. But guess what? It happened. He actually did. The pastor there, you know, resigned, and it's a whole thing. That man became the pastor. There was no information about that, and that was actually a very odd thing for all of us to hear. That man does not proclaim in prophecy whatsoever, but here we have people prophesying, but they're not acknowledging it, you know. So
and that's stuck in your mind.
It did. I referred back to it over. You know, you build kind of you build layers of truth to try to understand the world.
That was like in a file
around you.
You had that in a file.
Yeah. So fast forward. Now here I am. gathering with in this meeting of this Congolese meeting where this leader of this church and they have this whole meeting, and everybody at the Congo meeting, I was just invited as a potential. They said, hey, you want to just come or whatever, and I was praying about going, whether I should go or not. My wife and I were, and when I showed up to the meeting, after the first meeting, I kind of had already had a few encounters. There was a man the young man that was going to go to the Congo with this pastor, and I was in sales, and I was going around to different job sites, just selling projects and working on projects. Well, I was working on a large project, and I told this man, we were just talking. He's a really successful businessman with companies in Germany and in the United States, and I told him that I was thinking about going to the Congo with this group of people, and he's like, I know them. He's like, my kids went to school with their kids, because there were some Americans thinking about going with this Congolese pastor, and he said, you should go. He said that would be amazing. They're very skilled in organic gardening and everything, and so I had this tie with the homesteading and organic gardening, and then I had this tie now with this family that I'm working for knows these people really well, and so I was like, wow, isn't that interesting? So then I go the same week, I go to another job, and I had a back of my Jeep was full of apples because I had picked apples from somebody's house, and a friend of mine, and I had them all filled up in the back because I was taking them to my pigs, and I pulled up to this house to do a sales call, and I'm talking to this guy about a job, and he tells me. He tells me about what he wants and everything, and then I say, hey, I see you have organic stuff on your table. I said, I have a bunch of apples out in the back of my vehicle. Do you want a bunch of them? I'll give you a couple 5-gallon buckets. He's like, man, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. So he goes in the back, and while we're filling up, he's like, hey, you remind me of so and so. And when he said the guy's name, it's the guy that I was, that's going to the Congo. He said, you remind me of him. And I said, this is so weird. This is the second time this week that this guy has been referred to that I am going to Africa, or that's going to Africa. And so I am, like, it feels like there's this, this link being made, and like I started feeling confirmation that I'm supposed to be with him at minimum to gather at this meeting and meet them all, because I'd never met the other Americans that were skilled in organic farming and gardening, and then there was the pastor, right, that's leading it all from Congo. And so I gather at this meeting. It was at somebody's house, and by that time I really felt like I'm going. I just knew I'm supposed to go, and I was sitting at the table, and everybody's going around like, oh yeah, we're teaching people about moringa, and it's a tree of life, and if you plant this tree in this area where it's really impoverished, then it'll feed the goats and makes them lactate more in it. You put it in your food, like they have fufu there. It's like a root. There's a root in Congo that they eat. It's a manioc root, and they eat the greens of it and everything. But the moringa tree, if you put the leaves inside of the fufu, this flour they pound and mix with water, it's like a dough. It's almost like a grits that you would roll in a ball and eat. And if you put the moringa in that, then malnutrition's not a thing. It's like the children can be nourished. So all these amazing things.
People
yeah, and animals. You feed it, like these trees. They just they produce all this greenage. You can just feed leaves to them. It's an abundant resource that's locally available. And so I was like, wow, I've never heard of moringa. And he's like, yeah, if you take a map of where moringa grows and a map of the poverty of the world and you put it over the top, it's like exactly the same region that moringa grows. It's like, wow, that's fascinating. And we go on to the next person, and then, I'm bringing seeds. Seeds. I'm gonna all the seeds. I'm gonna start them a seed bank. And I'm giving out all the different things. And then I go to the next person. I'm a French teacher, and I'm gonna translate in French. French is their learned language within the villages, and so I'm going to translate. I'm one of the translators, and that's my job. And then they get to me and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm just like, I don't know. Do they need Bibles? Yeah, I can bring Bibles, and then one of the people there is like, they don't need Bibles. They don't need to be colonized, and then I just get like berated for the idea of like that I'm going to like go there and colonize them, you know, and like I'm like, well, actually for me, I don't feel that the Bible colonizes people, nor does true Christianity. I said for me, it's like that's how I like received my life, you know, like brought me back from death, you know, and so I just like shared what the gospel had done for me, and I said that's all I have to give really is like, you know, like it changed my life and how many other people need the same thing.
Yeah, freedom.
And so the leader there, he's like, yes, brother, you know, that's a very good thing. Yes, they need Bibles, you know. And so, you know, he kind of came to bat for me after it all like played out. But I did feel very, you know, insignificant, you know, and I felt like kind of like I was the one person that had the least to offer, you know what I mean? And so
you humbled yourself, right? It's kind of what was happening.
Yeah, I felt a little humiliated, you know. I felt like I was humiliated. I felt like I was, you know, I was being viewed as a colonial, you know, medieval kind of tyrant, you know. That's
back then you didn't look like a colonial guy as much as you do now.
Yeah.
Because right now it's kind of like the Patriot or something. But
yeah.
You just had short hair back then.
Yeah, I did. I had a very clean cut. I had a very clean cut hairdo going on there, and I you know, as time went on though, I felt leading up to it like, why am I going? Why am I doing this? Why am I leaving my family for a month? Why am I spending all this money, you know, to go to Africa? Until a week before I went, the leader called me and he says, hey brother, I want to ask a favor. We're doing an ordination service in the capital of Congo, which is Kinshasa. And he said, would you do the ordination service? I want you to lead it. And I'm like, well, okay, I've not really ever ordained anyone before, but yeah, I'll do it, you know. And he said, okay, he's like, just however God leads you, God will fill you and lead you, you know. So absolutely. So then at least I felt like I had a mission, right? Like that was, you know. And so we get on a plane, and it was just utter chaos getting into the airport. First of all, the leader was like, he was late, and like he's like panicked. He'd been up all night packing all these bags. He's asking all of us to check multiple bags. You can already take 2 large suitcases, but he's like asking all of us to take many more bags. We have all these bags, like literally like a van full of bags, and we're taking medical equipment, we're taking toothbrushes, we're taking, you know, eyeglasses, all these things that are, you know, not available there. And I didn't even understand that. Like here you can get about anything you want in America, and so all these items were very common items, and so I didn't quite, the gravity of the need didn't quite hit me yet. But so we have all these bags, he's sweating, you know, and then I watch him, he puts on this like outfit with this collar, and it has like the white thing, and it's like, you look like a pope, you know. And I'm like, why is he dressed like a pope? He's not a pope, you know. And I couldn't wrap my mind around what was happening until later. I didn't understand it. And so we barely make it to really, like, the plane is leaving us, so everything's already set up stressful, right? Like already intense. And this is my first exposure to, you know.
Is it still around Cincinnati?
Oh yeah, we're flying out of CVG, I believe, in Cincinnati there, and so we go and we end up landing in the capital of Congo, which is Kinshasa. And as soon as we land, this is before they remodeled the airport in Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and it was just really like the Wild West. We land and everyone's trying to get your bag. Everything is chaotic. You can, like, people are hanging out. It looks like downtown, like the bad part of town. That's what it looked like. The only reference I had was like over the Rhine in Cincinnati, like the area where you go to, and if you're wanting to buy drugs, or if you're, you know, I did a job there one time in over the Rhine, and I had to strip my van down totally because I was in construction, you know, and still am. And I had one guy would watch the van while the other one would carry the tools in the house. Like we literally couldn't leave the van empty or like, unattended because of the crime down there, and there's prostitutes standing at the street corner. They'd break into our house we were remodeling at night, and there'd be like stuff in their land where they were in there doing prostitution and smoking, crack pipes. There'd be chore boy laying on the floor, and it was just raw, and that's exactly what it looked and felt like. Everything about it.
And you're talking about the place where you got off the plane was like that.
The airport.
The airport
Oh, yeah.
itself? Is it like a building? Is it outside?
It was like just block walls. It was very, it would be like a very not well done machine shop or something. You know what I mean? Just a very, it was chaotic. It wasn't the normal, and everything was stressful. It wasn't like, hey, welcome to Congo or anything like that. I mean, and I've had that experience since then, but my first exposure, they were like, that wasn't it. And you can get either experience. When you go there, you could get somebody that's kind or somebody that's really like sweating you. Like they act like they don't want you in their country. And that was the experience. Like all the documents weren't right and all that's not right. And I'll call over a supervisor and then they're all looking at you and like looking, and like, they got guns in their hands. I mean, it's just really not an inviting circumstance,
What kind of plane are we talking about? Like, so you probably took several planes to get over there.
Yeah, we landed in Brussels, Belgium, and then from Brussels, Belgium, then we came on to Congo. We had to change flights, yeah.
So was it a smaller aircraft?
No, they're all big aircraft,
So
very large commercial airliners.
So whatever this airport is like, did you say it's the airport's Kinshasa?
Yeah, Kinshasa is the capital of the DRC, and we'll be talking about two different places. Right across the river is Republic of Congo. One was colonized by France, and then DRC Congo. So there's Republic of Congo and then DRC Congo, and they're separated by the Congo River. And in the DRC, it was colonized by Belgium, King Leopold II. All types of atrocities against these people. You can look it up and read it. It's very disheartening, very, dark. And then across the river, it was developed by France. And so there's very much a divide there. Like, the totally different cultures, even though you're just crossing a river. And so when you go into the DRC though, and you first encounter all the chaos and then all the stress and everything. I mean, you ever been to like a really like chaotic auction or like seen pictures of this New York Stock Exchange, like yada, yada,
oh, yeah.
Ding 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 ding, like that's all there. That was it. Like this chaos. So it's like you're just really kind of like not knowing like what's happening, and then you leave there and you kind of like, I got picked up by a person that has a ministry there in the Congo with they have big huge walls, and it's like they have like a refuge, in the middle of all that chaos. And for some people they call that home, and that's just normal to them. But for me, coming from the country and coming from the United States, it was such a culture shock.
So you're getting off this plane and you got all these bags and stuff, and everybody's just going nuts. It's like chaos, and it's like, how am I even going to get my bags? Because you only have the stuff that you brought.
So they have carousels, like on normal normal airports. And here, from what I remember, they just throw them out on tables and big piles on the floor. Which now it's not this way. Now it actually is nice. It is more organized. There's still people there like trying to extort you. Like last time they said like you have art in your bag, and if you don't give me $100, you're not going to board this plane. I mean, you know what I mean? And like this was a guy that a trusted guy had connected me with, and so I'm like, all right, now what do you do? You know what I mean?
Because what do you do? Does it show weakness if you give him the 100?
It's just
like, how do you know the right decision?
It's wild there. It's a wild west, and I don't know. I mean, getting in the car, there was a reprieve to all that because, like, this one man of God that's from California. He's from the Congo, but he lives in California, and he works with a lot of missionaries around the world. He's a very, very connected individual within missions. He's all over in most continents, involved in some sort of missions, and he helps a lot of missionaries get into their field in any way he can. And if you're going to the Congo, he's a man that opens his compound. He has like a missionary training facility there, like a what do you call it? Like a like a school. It's a school. What do you call it? A university, right? It's a missionary university. And so when you go there and stay at his compound, when you're coming in, it's like the landing. It's the landing pad, before you launch out into whatever part of the Congo you're going to. And he'll drive you to your airport or to your buses or wherever you're going.
Like a hub.
He's a hub of the gospel. He is, and he does this for many different denominations, many different people. If you're preaching Jesus, he's going to help you. And so
that's a cool job.
But he's in California mostly. He's there mostly, but he goes back and forth to the Congo often. But this man, he was helping the leader of our mission. He was helping him as well, and as he does help me now today. He still helps me, and getting inside of those walls, though, you felt a little bit of like a sigh of relief because of the chaos of the city. You see you come out of the airport and there's blacktop, but then you come off the blacktop and there's just big, huge potholes and no mufflers on the vehicles, people hanging out of the sides, all over on the tops. People just lined the streets. I mean, there's millions and millions and millions of people, and they're in terrible poverty. I mean, your kids selling little tiny pieces of fruit, and women out there trying to sell something to make just enough for bread for the day. I mean, everywhere you look, there's just great needs, and then there'll be other areas that are just wealthy. They have everything. They've got generators and air conditioning. It's just there's rich and poor. There's no middle class whatsoever there that I saw. And
how do the rich, how do they get their money over there? Do you have to be like involved in government or something to?
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah, I'd say mining or government is two of the big things that seem to be the involvement for most people.
Mining for.
Oh, well, you got coltan, you got all. I mean, our cell phones. I think it's 30% or 40% of the material that goes into those are from the DRC. So that's a big resource.
Probably some of it for all these batteries for these electric vehicles and stuff.
Yeah, it's coming from the eastern Congo a lot. That's a lot of the mining areas out there. There's other places down in the south a little, but yeah, a lot. The main mining is on the eastern Congo, over where the conflicts are heavy. There's a lot of fighting there for years, rebels and conflicts on the border of Uganda and Rwanda. So, but anyway, so getting into the Congo was, definitely a culture shock. But then this university, they drive us to another airport, and this airport was very different with the planes. These planes were not the same kind of planes. They were not as well maintained, and they're older and they're really loud, and the airport, was just very unorganized, as like a cab mixed with a bus station or something. Very different.
Sounds scary. That's like getting on a carnival ride at the fair. Like
it was pretty sketch. And then I learned that a lot of these planes are going down and they're not well maintained or anything, and so we get on the plane with all these luggages, you know what I mean, and just to even get on them.
You got no choice, right? What else are you gonna do?
It was so stressful once again, though. Like everywhere you go, there's a problem. There's a problem with the paperwork. There's a problem with the bags. There's a problem with your identification. There's always a problem, and it's just conveniently always there. The problem, and then the solution is always the same: is more money. Like it's interesting. Every problem, money seems to solve it. It's interesting. So we go out into we start heading over into the eastern Congo, into the central part of Congo, and we land. And then I started realizing real quick why he wore that Pope priest looking collar and everything.
Yeah.
It's because everywhere we're going, people are extorting you. And he's telling them I'm a minister. See, you know, like, and it was like the attire that he was using to, like, as like a identification, right? So that he's not as vulnerable to extortion.
Did you get one of those?
I didn't get one. I was just with them.
That'd be nice to have. It helps
Yeah.
it go any smoother.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's just, everywhere we're going, though, there was a problem. Even when we landed, that was the first thing. They take him into an office, set him down, and there's another problem. And so he's in there for literally hours. And I'm like, you know, is everything okay? Like, what's going on? You know, and it feels like we're getting arrested. And that's the energy they're giving, is like, that you can't go any further. You can't go where you're going. No, you don't have the right paperwork. No, this identification's not right. And they're freaking out. Blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, they're yelling, screaming.
You don't understand a word they're saying, I'm sure.
No, I don't, unless an interpreter helps me. And, you know, I met this one young man that is he's a local there in Kinshasa, and he's a little older than me. He looks younger than me. And immediately when I met this man, his name is Felix, we automatically bonded. And that was really helpful because he, as well as the leader of the mission, he spoke English. And he spoke it fluently. And so he was my interpreter. He helped me see, you know, behind the scenes of what's happening, you know. And so him and I just would pretty much involve ourselves with evangelism. So as they're fighting on us getting to leave or not, you know, because we had like SUVs waiting for us, and then they're not going to let us leave because there's a problem with the paperwork, then, you know, we just go out and start praying with people and talking to people about Jesus, you know. And so Felix and I immediately found that bond, you know. And if there was kids, you know, we'd sing with the kids. He's dancing. I mean, he's very animated. And so this became what we did to pass the time, because I can say every time you go through a border area, every time you go through a crossing, every time you're going into a new territory, every time, any village, anywhere where there's someone there that watches that station or that area, he wants to talk. And his whole goal is typically, not always, but mostly, is you have a problem. We got a big problem. You ain't going this mission's over. Like, this is it. You're going to turn around and go back. You don't have what you need to get through here. And then it's like, but I have a solution. How much money do you have? You know, and it's like, I'm like, my gosh, this is like, and so then it became very clear. This man, you know, the leader of the mission, I noticed he had like eyeglasses, and he had like different things, sunglasses, whatever, and he's giving them to these people. And I'm like, oh wow, like, instead of money, it's like, hey, I'm a minister, you know, he's got this outfit on, and I'll give you these glasses, you know. And it's like the glasses to them are very valuable because they can't get them, and you wouldn't think so, because, you know, they might have AK-47s and everything else, and you're like, well, you got several $1,000s worth of gear on you right now, like, pair of glasses isn't nothing, but it is, because I didn't find out till later, a lot of those guards don't even have bullets in their gun because they can't afford them.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's like a gun without bullets, and not all. A lot do, but I met many that didn't have money for bullets. Like the government had not funded that part of their mission. Just they've got the guns, but they weren't able to, you know, to shore up these things. A lot of the vehicles didn't have money for gas. You know, like they hadn't got their check in months and months. Some of them like 6 months, a year. They hadn't been paid by the government, and they're just there manning their post for a job, for dignity. I mean, so they're extorting you because they're hungry. And see, I didn't know that at first.
Goodness. See, that just changed my whole entire perspective.
Well, I didn't learn that for like 3 times of going. You know, I'm like going there for months at a time, and you know, each time usually around a month plus, and I went from feeling intimidated by these people to like feeling like sad, like they're just trying to make it, you know, and they're in it. They're under this structure, and they're trying to survive, you know, and they don't know the Lord, or if they do, they know religion about God. It's just religious, not really having a relationship with the Lord, and like getting provisions from Him. And so, we shifted a lot of things over the years and started realizing, wow, like we can like just put our arm around some of these military men and some of these people, these police, and just pray for them and give them something. If we have some food, give them some food. And and I've given them a little money before too in certain situations, but my perspective started shifting a lot, and as we started going, I got to see so many things. I had never seen like any type of supernatural, like witchcraft or anything along those lines. Like I've seen movies, whatever, but this was, I was now seeing things that I couldn't really explain. And the problems people were bringing us, like, oh, man of God, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, like their child is like manifesting, and and like it's like they're fully like look like an animal, sound like an animal, and
This is why you're still on the way to your destination.
We're encountering all kinds of things along the way, like the getting there is a huge part of the mission, because the getting there is. What we were doing on those missions was going to several territories, several villages, and then doing outreaches there within the seeds, giving the seeds, and the gardening and all that. And they were teaching them how to compost and different things. But it became very clear for me, like, that I was just there to preach the gospel, and that's all I was doing, And the ordination service I was talking about, I was blown away because we were 2 or 3 hours late to get there, and I that was in the capital, and I thought, are they going to be there still? Like we're 2 or 3 hours late. And he's like, oh yes, they're very in Congo we're very patient. And I said, okay, I'm thinking in American context, like what if we all had a service and you show up like 2-3 hours late? Like, how would that go? Would there be anyone there if they were waiting for the service to start? I just couldn't. But I got there and they were going berserk. They were there, they packed out in that place, and they have whistles. They're blowing like whistles, and and it's dark by now, and they're just dancing and wait. And they open our car door and like lead us in and everything. And then I was just like, whoa! Like they still have all this energy. They're waiting for something. They were excited.
What do you think they were doing while they were waiting?
Singing, worshiping.
So they were having a good time anyway.
They were. They just like to dance. They like to be together, and so we did the ordination service, and it was really wild because I really felt like the Lord show up that day, and I preached about having hunger for God and God showing up in your deepest needs, and like a lightning storm came, and like this. Just the thunder and everything that was there, it was really a powerful thing. And then there was these men and women that were ordained to go and help carry the gospel.
So you get there and it's dark, you said? You get there?
Well, it wasn't. It got dark because we were in traffic for hours and hours. I mean, we wasn't planned.
The people who were waiting on you, is it dark?
Yeah, it was totally dark by the time we got to the
it's dark, and then
gathering.
You have your translator though with you.
Yeah.
So you're preaching. So you say something, he says something,
right.
And the people are receiving it that way, and
exactly.
They're getting like super pumped up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they loved it. They really, the way that God would move on me anyway is kind of like the same kind of culture. I think they're really like they're very passionate people. They're always yelling. Like I had to learn that they don't, when they're talking to you in a loud voice, and like throwing their hands all around. Like here, it's like, oh, you're about to fight me. But there, it's like they're just disagreeing with you, or maybe even agreeing with you. It's just different. I mean, very, very passionate, And so I feel like the passion there was the common bond. Like I had such a passion for the presence of God and the Word of God that, when the Spirit would come, they just couldn't get enough of it, But when we were going, that was a church service, and there were lost people there coming to that service. But we were going out and as a mission, like to reach out to the villages. And so that was really where my heart was at. That's what I wanted to really be a part of the most, is outreach. And so
the meeting was in Kinshasa.
Yeah, the first one. Mm-hmm.
So the village means that you're going away from the city into basically the country, or like they don't have anything. They're like living in like huts out in the village or something. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so you have to take a plane or a bus or something to get out of the capital and get into the countrysides. And I mean, this is on the equator, so it's very hot. Even, I mean, I don't think I've ever felt it get colder than maybe 65 degrees Fahrenheit at night. I mean, it's just very hot. Most nights they're at 80 degrees or something. I mean, probably miserable for most people. And it's just very humid environment. And so when you go through the countrysides, they can live a lot of different ways because there's no winter there. They have 2 rainy seasons and then their dry seasons. And so when you go through the countryside, it's like you're going back in time to like the Stone Age. Like, really, they make everything out of wood. And the interesting thing about it is, when they were colonized by Belgium, they made them make rubber. Rubber was the big thing then, before rubber became made out of oil, petroleum. It used to be made out of a tree. It was a white sap that they would harvest, and they were treated very terribly if they didn't produce enough of it. And so with the mining and the rubber trade, they brought in all this industrial revolution of kind of equipment, but then they just left. You know what I mean? And that's a whole history thing there of how that all came to be. But oversimplified, they were abandoned by civilization. And so you have a people that lost their hunter-gatherer kind of techniques, and all of their skills have been just lost in several generations. But then they were just left alone. So now they're like kind of using parts of their hunter-gatherer, but not in its entirety. So they're kind of farming, kind of hunter-gathering. It's just this mixture, and they've lost a lot of their survival, to where they're just suffering to a level I mean, you don't even know how to digest it. To try to take it all in, I mean, it's just heartbreaking, honestly. I mean, you see a lot of malnutrition, you see a lot of people suffering, you hear a lot of people just desperate, and it's nothing like where I'm from, and so as I'm going through there, I'm just like, wow, like, am I even on planet Earth anymore? Like all these like thatched roofs with thatch on, like bamboo and all these different building materials, all out of the bush.
Is that like straw?
Well, they take these bushes, and different trees, and they cut them out of the forest, and they know how to weave, and they use rattan and tie it all. It's the craftsmanship is phenomenal. Yeah. What they can do with these natural. It's
kind of the same idea as shingles, but it's made from stuff that they find.
Yeah, and mice live in it, and rats. Like you've got the outside comes inside. And this is Congo, so you can imagine all the different animals. They if they ever see a snake, they chop its head off. I mean, I've seen people that have been bit by poisonous vipers that and the trees collecting palm wine or whatever, and I've seen what it does. It's gnarly. They have a tradition that they kill the snake and they eat it. They eat the snake that bit them. That's the tradition. And so that's how they handle that. But as you get into the villages, though, there will be, in the main villages, there will be some metal roofs, some metal buildings. They're very old, very rusty, typically. There'll be like maybe here or there somebody got some money, or a businessman or something, and you'll see some shiny galvanized metal or something. But for the most part, it's just there's nothing out there. And if you do transport it, it's very expensive. And if they do anything out of blocks, then they do it out of the sand that they have there, and they get like a Portland cement or something. They make their own bricks out of these forms, and so it's just it lasts a while, but it's still not like the blocks that we have here. The construction's not to that level still. So
So, when you're kind of on this journey, traveling and going to these different places, like what's some of the stuff that you're eating? Are you just eating stuff out of your bag or something that you brought, or is there other food that's being made?
So we're still talking about when I first went there, and the stories are going to shift dramatically because, when I first started going with this missionary pastor became a U.S. citizen, I think he got a lottery, like a citizen lottery, because of how smart he is, and his wife as well. I believe. I think they went to university, and they proved themselves as an asset to the United States, and they probably had a sponsor or two or something. I'm not sure the entire process, but they became U.S. citizens, and he still was a Congolese as well. So his heart and soul was out to the villages that he's from. And so all the supplies, we'd bring it all out there into the areas. We'd distribute it. He was very into changing the government. And
Is this Felix?
No, so this was a man named Jonas. Jonas and Eleanor. They're the leaders of the group.
You're there, basically. Those are the people that you met.
Right. He's the leader of the group. And then Felix was a translator that was traveling with us.
Okay.
Yeah. And so what Jonas wanted to do, if I have my facts straight, was he wanted to go to the governments and to the leaders and create change from that place. And so we met a lot of our outreaches and meetings were, there was the mayor there, the chief, and all the police chief, all the main players, the head of the government, because they'll have the political party members there that are represented. They're always watching and, making sure everything's legit. They don't want any kind of rebellion starting or anything. So there's lots of observers that are in the government. And so I remember I was asked to speak at one of those, and I was praying we were staying in this little mission compound, a Catholic mission compound, because they had some beds and things. They were housing us, and I was praying about, what do you want me to say to the leaders of the community? And I went to lunch, and because the ladies had cooked us some traditional food, and we were eating, and I came back and my Bible was gone that I had, and I think I had some notes or something too in it, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And then one of the African women came and brought me my Bible. And when she brought me the Bible, like a page had been chewed out, and it was the page of God's going to separate the sheep from the goats. And I was like, whoa. And immediately the Holy Ghost said, preach to him about separating the sheep from the goats. And so I told him the story how my Bible got hijacked by a goat. Some goat came into my room because the doors were open.
And really meant chewed.
The goat came and stole my Bible, and he took it out and was chewing on it out in the pasture, out in the edge of the jungle. And this girl found, my Bible, and she said, I know this is the American missionary. She saw the foreign language written, and so she brought it back with a page, sorry, the goat got a hold of it. And so when the page was just so funny, because it's so I got up, and when I released that word, people in the government, local government there, they were giving their lives to Jesus. And they were so engaged because I told them that the goat came and had to tell me what to say. Wow. And I said, there's a message from the goat. The goat has come to tell you that there's coming a day where you're going to see a separation of the sheep from the goats. The sheep are going to be those that know him, that are born again, washed in the blood of Jesus. And then the goats, he's going to say, depart from me, I never knew you. And so they were just that was a really clear, defined message. It was it doesn't matter how much power you have, doesn't matter, the prestige or the whatever position, if you're the chief of the whole village. And so it was just, that was the kind of experience we had again and again and again. Always seeing just really amazing moves of God. And I began to see different types of manifestations from the spirit realm that I never saw before. One guy came to us just weeping because he was a businessman, and his money that he would make, he had a secret lockbox underneath of a rug that he dug under his house in his hut, and he said that he didn't even open it up or anything, but the money was gone. And so we bought another one from the store, and nobody knew about it. And he said, I hid it at night, and I put it in there, and the money's gone again. And he's like, something is coming and taking my money out of a locked box. And I'm like, really? Come on. Like, how's like your wife, your a friend, like, does anybody else? He's like, no, really, no one knows. He's like, and I know what I did. My sins have found me out. And I said, well, what is that? And he's saying all this through a translator, and my translator's speaking to me. And he said, I went to the witch doctor and I asked them to bless my finances. And they did some potions and some mixtures, and then ever since then, this has been what's happening. Like, I'm under a curse, and I need this curse broken. And he's just crying. And he's like, I can't pay my debts. I have, like, my wife is going to leave me. And, it was just this, like, really escalated for him.
Is this your first experience with something that's directly witchcraft related?
Well, there was another one where a woman brought her child up, and the child was acting in a manner that I had never seen before. I could feel a presence, and I could see something in the child's eyes, and it was more than just bad behavior. It was something I couldn't explain, and then they're like, man of God, please help us, and so it was either saying like, well, take your kid to go get him some Ritalin, or there's nowhere. That's not right. He has bipolar, or, he has schizophrenia or whatever, and it's like, no, there's not that. That's not available. So it's like, well, I read about this somewhere in the Bible. You put your hands on this problem and you declare the power of God over it and command it. That's all I knew from the Bible. And so I did it, and I saw breakthrough. I saw God moving. And even this guy that was losing his money, first I said, you need to ask God to forgive you, because he said he was a Christian, he'd been born again. And I asked him through that, and I guess he had some connection to some Mennonite church there that was started 20 years ago. And so he repented and asked God to forgive him for his, going to the witch doctor. And so I said, that's the step one. And then next I said, we're going to break that off. We're gonna break that off. And we did, and we just commanded whatever spirit was coming and whatever was coming against his finances that would be broken, and we broke that off of it. And then the report we got back from him that the problem was gone. His money was safe. He was able to get his life back together from the report I got back from him. And he thanked me and hugged me, and that's the thing, because we kept coming back again and again, and you have these people coming up to you and, hey, do you remember when, and so that's where I was involved with the denomination, but yet the things I was seeing, they weren't well documented or spoken about within my denomination. They didn't really give me any teaching on what to do in them situations. So I was just kind of like, doing whatever came natural, I guess.
Yeah, it's wild. So it was just naturally happening that God was leading you how to do things that you had never learned about. Just as the situation would occur, somehow you knew how to command things in the spirit.
Well, the New Testament, I just been reading it a lot. I was burning through the New Testament. I think for 3 years, I was just reading the New Testament, and I saw there's like a confidence that was bringing in me, like a boldness, and that boldness was rising up. And so as time went on, Felix and I started reaching out you don't have a meeting planned every night of a gathering at a church or an outreach to the village leaders or whatever. So you have days in between those time frames. And during that time, Felix and I would go out and minister to the kids or go from house to house and just minister. And we went over to a funeral one day and, brought a gift, and we didn't know anybody, but we just took a gift over and said, we're sorry about your loss. We saw it was a big, huge funeral. They for days, they come from all over, travel there to mourn. And the women take turns wailing over the body, and that's their job. One of the family members will just wail over their loved one, and it's really beautiful, honestly.
It sounds like you copied it right out of the Bible.
Yeah, and so while they're wailing, they take turns wailing, and then they'll have music and dancing, and then, but there's always somebody wailing and mourning over this lost loved one. And so we would go with a gift over to something like that, and then once I give him the gift, Felix would ask, hey, can he preach to everyone, tell them about Christ? So that was the kind of opportunities that we were taking advantage of time and time again. And I remember that the first time we ever did that, I remember several people were drunk on palm wine, and they wanted to beat us up, and then the family, the immediate family, stepped in and said, leave them alone. This is our house. You can leave, or which was good, because it was starting to get that when they get worked up there, it can get escalated very quick, So it was just really anywhere we would go, we would just draw a crowd. Sometimes we would stop to get something from a store, the little makeshift little shack, like a little chicken coop looking places almost. I mean, they're just very, humble, and we would just get on the back of the truck or whatever and just start preaching the gospel. And you're like, who's this guy? Who's this foreign guy? And I'd just be declaring powerfully the gospel of Jesus Christ, And so
there's little shops with, I'm sure.
Well, there's people coming and going. There's lots of activity, and with the activity, you can draw a crowd. There's just exposure to a lot of people, and then they come over to see what you have to say. What are they talking about over there? So that became a norm. We just utilized every opportunity. And we were doing that while the leader of the mission, while he had a plan, right? But there's so much downtime, you see, and so we were just let's take advantage of it. You know what I mean? And so we saw a lot of people come to the Lord like that, through the two different styles there. It seemed like I really had a heart for the poor and for the least of these, and I could see that the leader of the group had a real heart to change the government and to get into the structure of things, which I think is really good. But I felt in my heart just a yearning and a longing to go to the unreached. And I remember we had a couple of days of downtime, and I remember sitting there and thinking, I want to go up there, up north, up where the Pygmies are, because I heard about this group of people that are short, and they live in a very humble life as hunter-gatherers, and their territory is diminishing, and I just heard their way of life is fading.
And they're actually short.
They're like 4 feet tall or shorter. Yeah, they're miniature, and they don't really know why. They have them traced back 5,000 years or something, or 4,000 years of living in those areas, and I don't know. They can run through the underbrush right quickly through the forest.
It's so crazy.
They're like Pooh Bear, they love honey. They'll just go completely berserk over honey. They'll just lose their brain over honey.
So it's a human being that is a different kind of human being that's very different from others. Yeah, so you have the Bantus, they're Congolese, and you have the Pygmy. They're also Congolese. The Bantu being more like what you described, the normal African people that are in that region.
Right. That's correct. And so I ended up, my translator, Felix, was left behind in the village we were at, and then I went all the way down to the border of Angola with the leader of the mission. And I remember going down there, and I remember us staying in a Catholic mission, and I remember my heart so much yearning to just be with them and to live more like them, to get down on their level. And I remember our drivers and the people that were helping us, I remember they're out sleeping on benches and on the ground, and I had this room that I had been prepared for me, and then we were going to sleep in there in these nice beds and in this room. And I remember I couldn't do it, and I'm like, what about them? They're sleeping on the bench and on the ground, and it's oh no, they're used to that, and I'm like, yeah, but I can't, I don't know, something snapped in me, and I just went out and slept on the ground with them, and it just infuriated, the leader of the mission, because I just got awakened to like the fact that I needed to go lower, and I just felt like that call, and I know there's a call to different places, and I just felt like I wasn't going to go back here again to the Central Africa area. I felt next time I'm going up and I'm going to enter into their culture, into their environment, and I'm going to bring the gospel into that. You know what I mean? Instead of, like kind of being really comfortable and then kind of going out and, just preaching and from a very comfortable place and then coming back. And so ended up talking to that man that has the ministry in the Congo. He has the university, and I talked to him specifically, and I told him my heart was to go up to the area up where the Pygmies are. Do you know anyone up there? And he said, actually, I do know a guy that has a denomination. He's in a denomination up there. I knew him 20 years ago. Let me see if I can get a hold of him. And so he got a hold of this guy, and he contacted him and hooked him and I up. And I started talking to him about coming up to the area where he's living. And I didn't know anyone up there. Didn't have any contacts other than this one minister. And so after through a lot of conversation, like, I'm like, hey, can you help facilitate a mission into the jungle? I want to be exposed to the Pygmies tribes, and I want to enter into their culture. I want to backpack and to go deep into their territories and their areas. And he sent back some kind of crazy budget of, I think it was like, he wanted $50,000 for a new SUV. He wanted like $20,000 for this. I was like, what is this? Like, and I sent it to my contact, at the university. And I'm like, what is this guy doing? Like, he's like, oh, I'm sorry. He's like, I'll let him know you're not trying to start a denomination. You're trying to do outreach. And so I got him straightened out real quick that we're not going to be rolling like that. That a couple of us are coming up from the capital, and we're going to be coming up with backpacks. I'll equip a few men. I think I equipped 4 or 5 guys, and I'm going to bring them their shoes, their backpacks, all their gear they need, but we're all going to be equipped to go into the jungle, and we're going on foot, And so we'll rent whatever bikes or SUVs we need. We'll rent them wherever we can find them, and then to facilitate us to the edges of the jungles or the rivers, and then from then on, we're just in there. And so it was really kind of like scary going in this time, because this time like I was on my own,
Second trip? Are we on
No.
trip 2?
This is maybe trip 4.
4.
Probably 4th time.
You're finally making it more to where the Pygmies are? So you kept going and you spent time like different places, Kinshasa and these different places the first 3 times?
Kinshasa was the smallest part of what we ever did.
Okay.
Most everything we did was out in the rural, which is needed. Kinshasa's full of churches. It has more churches than you can imagine.
Okay, so you're going to the villages or in the countryside.
That's where we were going in the central part, and now I have a contact up all the way up toward Central Africa, almost up on the border of the Republic of Congo. I have a contact up there, and now that contact is facilitating the men and the way to get into the Pygmies. He's supposed to do reconnaissance. He's supposed to get back to me with options. He's supposed to provide some men. We're going to do a mission in there that I'm going to be leading, but he's facilitating, right?
Okay, so we're about to dive into the jungle here, which is going to be super cool. But I'm wondering, can I ask you a few questions?
Sure,
Because
yeah.
I feel like I have questions. What kind of horrible things have you experienced at this point? Like, I mean, have you gotten really sick? Have you gotten horrible parasites? Have you, gone through a week of not eating out here? I mean, because we're now that we're getting several trips in,
Yeah.
I feel like you kind of need to catch me up on like,
Yeah.
man, what was it?
Yeah. So I had gotten sick, but most of the intense stories happen once I start going up into the jungle.
Okay.
Where I was going before, there was some sicknesses. You get something gets a hold of you there. It's just not like your normal sickness. That through the food, through the water, I don't know what all, but you kind of feel like you're gonna die. I mean, it's the way the sweats that you have and the dreams, and it's just really violent sicknesses, And so I'd already had some pretty violent sicknesses, but my biggest challenges are still to come.
So what about just little things that I would think about and worry about with going there? What about you're going into a different kind of world, You're used to washing your hands, you're used to having running water, you're used to all these nice things that we have here. Was it easy for you to go and be in a different world, and it's dirty, right? I mean, if the food's not as clean, or did that mess with you at all, or did you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my gut biome was definitely getting used to all the foreign materials. I mean, like I said, the fufu they make out of manioc root, that they pound it into flour, and and it's like grits or something, and that's a really humble diet that they have. That's really almost just all carbs. It would be like white bread almost for us. I mean, it's got some nutrients, but it's just that, and then the leaves off the top, they'll cook those, and then they'll pour that juice over it. And then the best part is they have what's called pili. It's like where they take habaneros and chop them all up with onion or whatever else, and then that's like this juice stuff, maybe a little oil or something in it, and you put that on there, and I mean, it's pretty good. The food, I really enjoyed the food, and it wasn't really for me. I actually liked it all. It's pretty raw, but
how often
I felt
do you
like
get to eat meat? Are you doing mostly carbs?
No, they had goat and things there. They had goat, and they had pig and chicken, and just little chickens. Really, the first 3 missions that I ran in the Central Africa was very different than the ones that I'm about to tell you. It's so different because, well, in the jungle you have what you can shoot or catch, and in the villages you can buy fish, you can buy goat, you can buy pig. There's things available, and then they can cook it for you, and it, for me it wasn't bad. It's, your body has to get used to it, but it was, I feel like once I crossed the threshold up into the north, everything changed. I felt like that's where, I felt like all the guardrails were off, and it was already crazy. And, I felt like what I'd been given by the leader of the mission, the elements he'd given me, like how he had wore the thing, the Catholic kind of
collar.
Right. And then how he operated, like how he would give gifts, like small gifts. Those things are crucial. You'll go completely broke if you don't do that. Just bringing pens, sunglasses, little toys, bringing things that you can give out at the different checkpoints, it's huge. Just give them a gift, show them some respect, and try to get through. And that doesn't always work. I mean, some of them are bent on getting money, and so they're going to make your life pretty crazy. But then after they're satisfied, they become kind of, a friend or an ally. They want you to remember them. It's kind of a really weird kind of like, smack you in the head and then hug you afterward. It's really kind of like what it feels like, though, a lot of times. It's
like you have something that they want, but at the same time, you're kind of like a celebrity of sorts.
That's a really good way to say it. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I get up, I land in the Congo. Jacob Brandstetter, a young man, goes with me. He's just fresh, into this kind of radical living. He's coming out of the denomination. He's gathering with us, and I'm his pastor, and he said that God didn't really call him to go to Africa, but he called him to go with me. He said like God wanted him to just go with him and be with him. And so he was like just there to help me any way I needed help. And we went up there not knowing anyone other than this correspondence through email to this guy up here in the middle of nowhere. And so we fly in to this area, get out, and we're picked up by this man named Sungu. And Sungu picks us up, and he's this really like round kind of individual. Looked like he'd been eating very well, and then, but the rest of the people with him, like very, very thin and very like. And I find out he has a huge school, and it's all huts, but it's this denominational school, and it's like a college, where they teach them the Word of God and send people out to their prospective ministries. And so he had me, I think there was 3 men that he had selected for me out of his university, and then himself. And so I had everything for them, their shoe size, their backpacks, all their gear. I had everything. And then giving them this stuff, they were just like so humbled. I mean, you would have thought that I was giving them like a brand new life. They were just like weeping, with in excitement. And
where did you get this stuff from?
Oh, well, I mean, I just ordered it all, put it all together, just like I had learned from the leader of the mission. Yeah, I ordered it all and had suitcases full of stuff. I mean, I'm just like what I learned. I'm going with as many suitcases as I can possibly handle. And so then trying to get it through the airport, right? Because the airport still was really shady when I started going up north, and into the jungles. And I actually had a couple bags stolen even that time. It just it takes so much time. It takes like a day or 2 days just to deal with that element of that you have your bag stolen by somebody that works at the airport. And this was the smaller airport that you have the main airlines like that get you into the capital, but then you have the smaller airlines that get you out into the jungles. And they run less frequently, and they're more expensive, and they're less professional mostly. And so I fly out there to the jungle, get picked up at this little airport by this team of Christians, and then they take me into the town, and they bring me into the town like a celebrity. And it's just like very foreign, like they're putting palm leaves in the road and everything, and we're just like, what the heck is this? Like, this isn't really what we're what we're here for, you know what I mean? Like, this feels weird, and we start feeling like I'm afraid they may be like wanting more than we're able to give from them because of the level of like honor it feels like they're giving us, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like they're expecting us to build new hospitals, schools, churches, like their whole world's going to change because of us, right? And like, we're just a couple of young men that have saved up for a year to be able to afford to go into the jungle to share this God that we found with the world. And so we go, and he introduces us to his team. We give them all their equipment, their backpacks, and then we go out as far as we can go without, getting into a boat and also hiking. Like our SUVs took us as far as we could go. And I remember we were up on this huge ledge looking over this river, and just totally raw, and it's all jungle. And we have this map that they've drawn. And he said, okay, this is the reconnaissance I did. This Baptist mission leader. He has this map out, and we have our team here that he brought together for me.
He's the big guy, right?
Yeah, he's the big guy, and he says, what are we doing here? Pygmies are here, 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 here. Here's all their encampments. And he's like, where do you want to go? And I looked at the map, and I saw one way out there in the middle of the jungle, and I said, that one. And he's like, no, and he starts arguing with me, no, and he's like pointing to all the ones close, and he's like, and I was like, that one. And he's just like, no, and he's like, they're talking back and forth, and they're arguing, and he just doesn't want to go to the far one. And I'm thinking, like, well, you did the reconnaissance and you showed me, why are you fighting on, why doesn't he want to go there? And I come to find out, like, the guy living like a king. He's because he's the man of God, because of colonialism, I assume, they have this culture in the church where you become served by everyone if you're the pastor. And so because he's ahead of the whole denomination in that region, he was living very, very comfortable. And so he would eat meat every day and have all, and then, the other people, they're just trying to make it, they're barely getting by. And so I was pushing him out of his comfort zone, and he didn't really realize what our visions began to clash immediately. And so he finally yielded to that, and he's like, okay, all right, we'll go to that one. So then he's not in a good mood. He's like dragging his feet, and next day we had to get in boats. We had all these boats, and they have all the connections, so they're commandeering all these different vessels. And when we get our boats, these are not speed boats. These are not, anything that you would want to ride in. They're big, huge trees. They have such beautiful trees. They're like trees that go to the sky. They're massive trees in the jungle. They're beautiful.
Are they even way different than like California, the sequoias?
I mean, they're not quite as tall as the sequoia trees, but they're very tall. And I mean, maybe they are. I'm pretty sure though that they're not quite that tall, but they just go. They're some of the girth of them and just the way the roots are. I mean, it's just such a gorgeous environment. I absolutely love the jungle, and it's God's glory is just like everywhere you look, And
some of those trees, you think they're like thousands of years old? I mean, to be that big?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, some of them look like they've been there for hundreds of years for sure. I mean, at least 100 years or more. And it's something. It was interesting how things are so beautiful while it's trying to eat you, because that's like I was about to be schooled within the, like the hostility of the jungle. We're now though ready to get into our vessels, and these trees that they've cut down, they hollow them out with axes, and then they burn them out, and that's what you ride in. You ride in a boat that's been hollowed out, by men's sweat and blood for days and days.
Goodness.
I think it takes like maybe almost a week to make a ship, and so
Is it like a canoe kind of?
Well, a massive canoe, because they're very long. They can be. I mean, you can make a boat out of any. You can make a one-man boat. You could make I think we've had 30-some people in some of the wood dugout boats.
30 people?
More.
From one tree?
Probably more. Yeah, from one tree. They're huge. Very, very long, and they'll mount motors on them. Like somehow they get this like little old like smoky motor and like clamp it down on the boat, and then they'll just go along. If they don't have that, they'll have to oar it. If you're going upriver, you hope you have an engine. But so we get in these boats, and I'd never been in a wood dugout before. I'm just like fascinated with it, because it's like going back into prehistoric days here. I've never seen anything like just the craftsmanship of it. To me, as a carpenter, was just really cool. I was just appreciating everything I was seeing, and they're such hard workers. They can do so many things with the jungle material. But we got in these boats, and we went for maybe a day or two down the river, and then we all got out onto the riverbank, and we set up camp for the night, and from there we went on in foot. And I had not seen the Pygmies yet, but this is where I first started meeting the Pygmies.
Didn't even seen them yet. You already have a mission in your heart.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen them, and they're all on the riverbank, like a bunch of them waiting to like take us to the, to their to this encampment. Cool, man. Yeah, and it was like a place called Kuka. And so this was like 5 miles, I would say, away from the nearest Bantu village. And the village that it's close to it's not much of a village at all. But when we went up into the jungle, we have nothing but our packs at this point. You have no vehicles, no boats, no nothing. We got all of our packs. We have our gear. It's got some cameras, GoPros, whatever we have with us to eat. We have some different, meals that you mix with water and stuff. And I mean, we got like pigs in the boat and goats in the boat, like the chickens tied, their legs are tied. I mean, you're riding with, like, there's poop like at your feet, and it's getting on your bags and stuff. And it's all, and water's coming in the boat because the wood's leaking. You got these leaks in the boat, and it's like, you're just kind of having to throw away all your standards and all your boundaries, because all my stuff is getting violated, and I'm, I just kind of was amazed how our refrigerator was moving with us basically into the jungle. It's all alive. All of our food's alive. That's how you keep it good, because in the humidity you're going to lose whatever fresh food you have in a matter of hours.
You really get to know your food.
Oh yeah, and I was quite amazed how even like through the villages, they tie chickens' legs together and put them over the back of their bike, or they hog tie a hog and have it on the back of the bike, and it's just bouncing. Goats on the backs of the bike, like they're just, all the food's just traveling around like tied. I mean, PETA would have a field day with what you see there. Within 5 minutes, they would have a cardiac arrest, with the kind of things that they see. So, but for me, I started having appreciation for the way that they do things, because I saw there's a way of the jungle, and it's very different. You have to learn it. You have to have them teach you. And so they started teaching us different plants, different mushrooms, different snails. We just started watching and learning. And
snails? Do you eat snails?
Yeah. There's a
cook them?
Yes. Yeah. They cook them. They boil them. Yeah.
I wonder what the texture's like.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I some of the grubs and other things like that, they're kind of hard to get past, but I eat them. Like, we have this one worm that eats the logs out. It's like in the wood. It just eats on that stuff, and they're like this, like, really like big fat looking caterpillar thing.
White?
Yeah, and they fry them, and when you eat them, they explode in your mouth a little bit, and they're crunchy. Yeah, on the outside. Very rich in nutrients and protein, but you really got to develop a stomach for this stuff.
Is it like fatty? Like, I'm trying to.
That it has fat, it has protein, it has pretty much. It's quite just a nucleus of nutrition.
Is there a way to make the flavor good, like if you had a certain kind of spice or something?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the texture is the part that like kind of throws you off. It's the texture of it is really hard to get past. Well, so as we're traveling through the jungle, though, I'm starting to see that these guys are operating at another level. These pygmies are strong. They're tiny, but they're strong. They're throwing packs on their backs and all these bags that were taken, because the idea is the deepest encampment to take things like machetes, clothes, like whatever we could take with us to help them in a way that's sustainable. You know what I mean? A way, meaning, if you give a man a machete and a shovel, he can garden and he can chop things down. He can make things, right? Like, you can give him a lot more with the tools like that than you can if you just give him a meal, right? Or like do something for him.
Because there's a lot of building materials just naturally around you. If you have a couple of
everything
tools.
That you need, everything they need. Yeah.
I like that.
It doesn't last forever, though. You're going to be maintaining it, but you talk about a carbon footprint. I mean, it's very little.
Yeah, you're living
very
with
little.
the earth. That's really cool.
But the roofs, I mean, if you see this roof between a metal roof, I mean, it leaks. Rats live in it. I mean, and if you put a metal roof there, it just eliminates the animals in it already, snakes and rats and mice, and it also doesn't leak anymore, And obviously you can add materials, and then every so often you have to replace the thatch with more thatch, and so it's a consistent cycle. But moving into the forest, I was able to see how they operate. I got to see inside of another world I've never seen in this world, and this is where I feel like I feel like up to now is kind of like just setting the groundwork, but I feel like really my passion comes alive at this point with everything, because I feel like I've been able to enter into literally another world, and definitely out in the savannah and everything was another world as well. But like, I feel like I got to live inside of the world. You know what I mean? I got to be where they are, sleeping beside them, with them, with the people.
I want a little bit more of a description of what these pygmy, and is it Totan? What they're called also is
okay. There's the Totan people, Pygmies, Totan, or the what would you call them? They call them the indigenous people.
Like a native people. Or like
exactly, like American Indians would be to the Americas. That would be the Pygmies in the Congo. But however, the Bantus have been there as well. It's just they didn't. I don't really have all that like cleared up as like how they all integrate exactly, like how. I just know the Pygmies have been in those particular forests for thousands of years. They haven't migrated.
So,
anytime
what
recently.
about like how they look? Like, do they look just like us? Do they look like more like a dwarf?
I mean,
like, is there proportionate of their bodies and stuff? What do they look like?
Yeah, they have bigger feet and they have bigger hands. And so what I hear is that has something, there's like different scientific research about this, but like the level of protein that the Pygmies are exposed to, because they have more protein and they have a better diet, that their brain and cognitive abilities is better, and the size of their feet and hands, it has something to do with like early childhood development and different things. The Totan people, the Pygmies, they can describe to you 6,000 different plants and animals, and they have them all memorized, and so what I noticed, as soon as I came into this region, I noticed that everyone was confused. Why are you coming to the Pygmies? Like, these are like, why do you care about the monkey men? They're monkey men and they don't have a soul, and I'm like, what? What? And I couldn't understand. And they're like, well, they don't sit in our churches. We'll have them come into our services, and they just always leave. They have like a wandering spirit. They don't want to stay here and be part of the churches. And so I was a little confused, because I was like, well, okay, why are you wanting them to come into your culture? Why aren't you going to their culture? Because I felt like that's what missionary work is about. Like Paul's like, you become all things to all men. So I was a little confused at their model. I noticed a very recurring theme in all the churches and church leaders that I would meet in the territory was that they've given up on the Pygmies. They don't want to mess with the Pygmies because they're very different and they're like animals, and I'm not interested in a people that I have to chase around or that won't come and be part of our culture and sit here in these pews that we've created, that we cut out in like these wooden, pews. And so I'll give them that. They don't make good congregants. I mean, when the honey flow's going, they're after the honey. When certain nuts are there, when certain mushrooms, they follow the food. And so
it's just different. It kind of reminds me of children. Like, not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
But you're basically saying they're not monkey men. They're smarter.
They're very smart, but their intelligence has been placed in a different category than what the Bantus see as value. The Bantu Congolese people, they want to become Americans or Europeans. They want our culture. They want our materialism. They want everything we have. They want to create the cities and towns like we have. That's what they want. That's all they're about, really. Like, that's what they want. And the Pygmies, what they want is honey and meat and a wife, or a husband. Like, they're very simple. They don't have the same goals and aspirations typically. They like shiny stuff though. They like your packs. They like your shoes. If you have a little pill like malaria med, like, what is the pill? I want that pill. Like, they don't even know what it is. You're taking it, so share it. They want to share it.
I like that. I like meat and honey.
Oh yeah. But living with them already, I saw they were super strong. I know that was the first thing I noticed. They're stronger than the Bantus as a whole. They're stronger than us. They have a lot of strength, And the other thing is they move extremely fast through the forest, like they run. And I couldn't keep up. I had a 60-pound pack, I think. I was somewhere between 50 to 60 pounds. And, I was trying to keep up with them. I was trying to be tough, but my knee, like some tendon in my knee started like messing with me so bad that I should have asked them to slow down or like had somebody transfer some weight out of my pack, but I just was trying to push through. And I ended up getting to where I couldn't even carry my own pack, and the Pygmies just jerked it right off my back and just like put it right on theirs, and there's like this little tiny short guy running with the pack. And I'm like, dude, you're so strong.
I know how strong you are and how good you are when you get into the woods and stuff. And like, man,
I couldn't keep up with them, and so I did learn though from then on to try to keep my pack 40, 45 pounds or something, and if you got to have more than that, like distribute it with other bigger folks that have the frame for it. And moving at that pace, if we were going at a slower pace, you could do it. But they just, because it's their, I walked into a whole nother world. I noticed there's trails everywhere, but they're not just game trails. They're people trails. It's the people that travel through. It's like they go to work like that. Their daily life going to work is them going to collect mushrooms into a certain place, or going over to a grove of trees where they know there's a lot of monkeys, and they'll be over there and they'll have these old shotguns that look like literally they're from the 1800s, and it has like a clamp on it, like an old like hose clamp, like to keep the barrel on the wood. And it's just like it looked like the firearm's just about to fail, and like the hammer just barely works. It's like,
they actually do it. They actually get monkeys like that.
Oh yeah, and they're very proficient at that, and they even go out at night, and so now everything's changing. Now we're seeing that out there's different things available to you. There's monkey, there's forest antelope, there's alligators.
So they're eating better.
They're eating better. It is a better quality of food out there, honestly. But it's interesting because the Bantus, the whole time, they have this. They're trying to indoctrinate them about their fufu, and about this root that they eat. It's like really weird. They want them to like cram them into their mold, and they're really dogmatic about it. Like they're really forceful about them wanting to eat like them and to do like them. And
you mean the Bantus? There's some traveling with you?
Oh yeah, because if you remember this ministry leader, right?
Oh right.
Sungu, he had these 3 other men that are going with us. They're
skinnier guys. Right?
They're tall. Yeah, they're very tall, and they're beautiful people, by the way. Very, very, very humble and very, just open. Open, and I enjoyed their company.
How tall are they? Are they really?
They're taller than me. That's not much to say, but
me?
Yeah, maybe like your height, around there, something like that. But as we're in the forest, we had to camp. We had to stop at an encampment, I believe, and take a rest. And it was just neat seeing where they camp. They have all these little camps throughout the forest. And I guess if you were here and you were on the Appalachian Trail or maybe the John Muir Trail out in California, there's different campsites, right? There's different places set up where you would camp. It's similar to that. It's only instead of them doing this for fun, this is their life. These encampments literally are their it's their home. It'd be like your house. Only if you had a house in Florida and then you have a house out in Canada, right? Which is the ideal thing in America, to have multiple places, and you'll live in different places because it's cold, in winter. So you go down to Florida, and then it's too hot. Now you're going up to Canada in the summer, right? Like for them, they live in this little cleared out place in the forest, and they'll make bush structures, right? And those bush structures will be maintained as they come back and visit it periodically through different parts of the season. And they know what part of the season, what thing is in, in harvest, what's in, ripe, and what time it is to harvest what element. And so it's just really it's really a genius way that they live. And
they're eating fresh. That's the true farm to table right there.
It really is. Yeah. And so we finally made it to the place they call Kuka. And the Kuka was supposedly the largest encampment of pygmies that they knew about that was deep in the forest, the deepest one.
Is that the one you pointed to?
Yeah, it was the one. And we arrived to that. And so we arrived to it, and there was a group of people, and they were so cute, the little kids. I mean, it's the cutest little kids you ever seen. They're so small. You know, and then you got mamas, you know, with breasts hanging out, with kids hanging on them, you know, and just, you know, they just living all together. And they all, like, they have this, like, you know how you go to, like, the state park or something, they have, like, the little shelters, like, the, you know, the, what do they call them, the little shelters, like, pergola or something.
Pergola?
Yeah, something like that, where it's open on all sides, but has a roof on it. It's like that, kind of.
Like a tent?
It's not a tent, really. You know how when you go to the state park, they build a shelter. They call it a shelter, and then they have all the picnic tables under it.
Oh yeah, like a gazebo. Or
exactly,
a pavilion.
Yeah. Pavilion. That was the word I was looking for. So like a pavilion, they build like this pavilion kind of looking thing, and they all sleep all together, all on the ground in the dirt. And some of them might have like little like tripod sticks with other sticks laying and sticks this way and a little thatch, and they might be elevated, but a lot of them on the ground, just various. It's like instead of sleep number bed, you get to decide if you want to be on the dirt or if you want to be on some thatch on the ground, or if you want to be slightly elevated, 1 inch, 6 inches, 12 inches. Some people are even higher. And it's just like they're all there.
Of going camping with your kids.
Yeah, my kids are like pygmies.
One of them's hanging from the trees. One of them's got a little tent.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and so I've the first night we were there, we made our camp. I was actually in a hammock at this point. We'd done all this research, right, trying to figure out how to sleep and how to live. We had no idea what we're going into. So it was like, is a tent the right way? Is hammocks the right? We don't know. So we had these hammocks. And so when we get out here into this place called Kuka in the middle of the jungle, the sound at night is deafening of like nightlife. And it's just so cool. And the mosquitoes come out to just like out for blood. And what I didn't realize though is the storms, right? They said that, I was like, why do you clear out this space and remove all the trees? And in the daytime you're baking in the sun in the middle of the jungle. I'm like, and you walk into the trees and it's like, I'm not kidding you, it's like, I bet you it's 10-20 degrees cooler in the jungle than it is out in the sun, the African sun. And where that sun beats down, the sand starts to form. You start seeing sand, and it kills the vegetation because the intensity of it just turns to sand. Even though there, you know, if you go in the forest and dig, there's going to be like rotten leaf matter and just rich soil. There's only a few inches or feet of that, and then it's sand, you know. And so as you expose it to the sun and the water washes it all away because there's not roots to hold onto that, it becomes desert. There's desert under that forest. It will all become desert if you don't keep the trees there in the vegetation to retain that soil, that topsoil. Well, I was like, why are you guys doing this? You're baking in the daytime. At night, you know, there's nowhere to hang our hammocks. So we had to like put poles in the ground, like angle them to hang our hammocks. I'm thinking like all the trees in the jungle, I can just hang on any dang tree and I can just, you know, but I didn't even have anywhere to put my hammock. I'm realizing now I should have brought a tent. But it's too late because I have a hammock. So first night, man, there was a storm came through that rocked us. And I became very aware why we weren't in the jungle. I'm talking like I started hearing trees falling that sounded like shook the ground. I mean, the storms that came through were intense, and the trees I heard them coming down. It was like, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is it? And you know, and then the next day I started talking like, wow, like I see what you guys are saying. So these trees will fall on you, and they're like, oh, come with me. So they led us into the jungle, and we go up to this hut, and this hut had the tree laying on it, and somebody had died. They like literally buried, I think, a kid because a tree had fallen on their little grass hut because it had the trees above it. So they clear the trees where they sleep and where they live.
Water?
What is it?
Say the water knocks it. What knocks the trees down?
Well, the rain gets the when the intensity of the amount of rain and the intensity of the wind and just the power of it coming through, it just pulls it up by the roots. Like it just comes down. It soaks the ground and the tree comes down. And then when the tree comes down, it gives light in that area, and then it just the smaller trees just come up and replace it. It's a very common thing in the jungle to see trees falling down like that.
Wow, so different from anything I've seen.
Yeah. So in the middle of the night, one night, the leader of that, that seminary in that denomination, he fell asleep and he had a dream. And he woke up the next day and he told us all the dream. He said, I had a dream last night. And he said, I dreamed that God came to me. And God said, he said, shame on you, Sungu, that you have never put your hand inside of another Pygmy's hand. And he said, and I've led these American missionaries all the way from the other part of the earth into your back door, just at the, just past your back door, to reach the people that you're not reaching. And he said, you need to reach your own people. And he said, and he's like, I'm repenting before you all. I'm just saying, that these are my responsibility, and I want to change. I want to reach out to these people, And so he saw the point of what we were doing. It seemed that he had caught on to that, and this was the part where we started kind of doing outreach with the Pygmies. After he had said that, he kind of seemed like he was more on board, and we started doing more outreach. We started preaching and teaching them about Jesus, and Felix had them doing dances and everything and all this, and then we also saw the deep need there, and I was just like, man, they have so many needs. Their clothes are tattered. They don't have the machetes. They're digging in the ground with their hand. They don't have so many things, and my heart was just broken for them. And so I was like, where's the closest village or whatever? I'm like, well, gosh, you have to pretty much go into the Republic of Congo to get there. And so I was like, well, let's do it. And so we hiked for a day or two all the way to the border of the Republic of Congo to go and get equipment to bring back to this village again. And so we go and we hike all the way to the edge of what's called the Ubangi River. And we go into that territory, and as soon as we go into the town, we were met by the military. And the military there isn't very well equipped. There's a couple people with the camo outfits or whatever, and they have some AK-47s with banana clips and whatnot, but they didn't have a lot there. It was very makeshift. And he was very coarse with us, and he didn't believe us. He's just like, he can't go into the Republic of Congo. They're not going to let him into the country, and you can't leave, and, we're keeping you here. And he just was very coarse. And the guys he had with him have AK-47s, and they're drinking, and they're wasted on liquor. And here I'm like, what's happening here? Because they're sitting us down like criminals, and then he's getting in my face, and I can't understand what he's saying. So Felix is interpreting to me, but he's saying, no pope, no bishop, no man of God, woman goes into that forest. What are you really doing? You're here for minerals. You're here for this. You're here for that.
I was thinking
you're here to take our resources. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what in the world? Or what's, and they're drunk, and I'm looking at the guy swaying, with the gun, and I'm like, what? I mean, I'm going to get dispatched here, by some drunken soldier, right? And I'm going to, leave my wife a widow and my children orphan, and but I wasn't in control at this point. He eventually got to the point to where he calmed down, and I think he somewhat believed our story, and he negotiated with Felix, and he said, okay, here's the deal. You can go across with 2 men to the Republic of Congo, get your supplies, come back, but these Americans are going to be in my custody. They can't leave. And so I'm like, what in the world? So now I'm on house arrest, basically, and all I'm trying to do is help the Pygmies, and if I remember correctly, we even had some pygmies with us. But they just can't. Why are you going to pygmies? Pygmies are animals. Why would you help them? That's their thought process. And so that was the hardest part for them to digest, is that there's no reason at all for you to be in that forest outside of some type of monetary gain. And of course, it's not the intention at all. It was funny at one point. Felix, my interpreter, he pulls up my legs, my pants leg, and he's like, look at his legs. And he's like, you see all those cuts? Look at all those cuts. And he's like, that's not for money. Like look, he's in the forest. He's a minister of the gospel. These cuts aren't, and he's trying to describe to this guy and like prove to this guy, but the guy just wasn't really believing it though. So now I'm alone with this guy, and I don't really have. I'm trying to think who's interpreting.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, because my interpreter's gone. I think there was somebody in the community there that spoke broken English, is what we had. And so he takes us to this little house, and it was just not comfortable at all. And we're sleeping there, and I really felt like I was in prison, because I don't know the language. I can't leave. I'm, if I leave, it's the military. This is going to be a big deal for me. I can't even go on a walk somewhere. I'm just stuck at this house. So he kept coming back to check on his prisoners, And one of the times he came back, he sat down with me, and I felt a burden for him, and I felt like God was giving me something for him, and I said to him through this broken English interpreter, I said to him, hey, I have a word from God for you. And I told him about his immorality and the life that he was living, and that, I know what you've been doing, and I know those girls that you're and I just went through like his life and what he was doing, and the way it was making him feel, and just his whole experience on a day-to-day life, and the way he was feeling in private. And when the interpreter told him those things, he started weeping. This is the guy. He wasn't even wearing military garb. His men were. They are the ones with the AKs. He had regular outfit on, and he had a pistol in his back pocket. That's what he had on. So he was like a higher ranking border kind of agent or something. And he had his soldiers that were at his command. And so now here it is, this commander of, or whatever he's called, he's now just in tears, like just jello, just melting. And he begins to talk back. And through the interpreter, he says, I've been having reoccurring dreams for years that a man from America had a message for me, and that he was going to give me a message. And he said, and now you're telling me that this is from God. And he's like, this is the dream that I had. And he's like, you're right, I need to give my life to Jesus. And so he bowed his head, and I led him to Jesus Christ right there at that table we were sitting at. We were sitting on two sides of a table, through an interpreter.
This is the most amazing thing ever. It's like you're living the Bible here.
He ends up changing his whole, he changed his whole program from that point on. From then on, he hugged me, and he got all soft. He told me I could wander about the village. Nobody's going to touch me. That you're going to be safe here. And so from that point, it still wasn't fun, because I'm still stuck at this village waiting, not knowing what has become of my comrades, because they're across the Ubangi River, and I'm like, where are they at? It's been days, and I'm still here waiting. And there's no way to call, no way to contact, no nothing, and I'm just on the riverbank here. And I tried to enjoy myself. I tried to learn. I got with some young men and stuff, and just through miming, basically they're teaching me how to do cast nets and stuff, and just trying to pass the time with whatever, and read my Bible as much as I could, and just praying about the mission and everything. But finally the boat came back with Felix and these men, and they had tons of supplies. They're just totally laden down with supplies. So we go back into the jungle, and we get porters. We had to bring some people with us to port the stuff in, and we basically started a village inside of the jungle that they had already called Kuka. It was a camp up until that point, a Pygmy encampment. But after that trip to the jungle, we started an actual village. And so the heart of the reasoning of why we start villages inside of the jungle like this was what we noticed is when they're in the village, they're called animals, and they're called pygmy animals and monkey men and all these other things, and they're enslaving them and making them work in their gardens and getting them drunk on palm wine, giving them marijuana and whatever they can to addict them and to keep them in bondage. And so my thought is if we go into where they're accustomed, into their territory, bring in the gospel there, bring in enough supplies to create an environment where they can sustain themselves, right? They could be outside of the influence of the Bantu, because they're just not, that world is a hostile place for them. And in the early days, I would read books about different missionaries, and as far as I can tell, missionaries would go into the environment that the people live into. They don't expect the people to come out of their environment and to live in their place. And so that was the shift that I was seeing that needed to be made there, that their idea of missions was very different from that of the early church. And so they caught the vision. A lot of the people did. They saw it because a lot of the people there, they gave their lives to the Lord. The young man that I had with me, Jacob Brandstetter, he saw his first miracle. There was a woman suffering with malaria. She was very weak, very sick. And Jacob and I laid our hands on her, and we prayed and we commanded healing in the name of Jesus. And Jacob had never prayed that way before. He prayed, Lord, please heal this person or whatever, but never commanded healing. And so I said, Jacob, we're going to command healing, and we're going to command this fever to leave. We're going to command that, that in Jesus' name, be whole, be healed. And so we laid our hand on her, and we both had our hand on her head. And while we had our hand on her head, when Jacob commanded, be healed in Jesus' name, immediately the fever left her. We felt like it was so hot, it was radiating heat on her hands, and literally in the moment the fever left, and she stopped she was totally whole. And Jacob was he's looking around I'm like, did you feel that? Did you feel what just happened? And he's just and his eyes are just dancing all around, and he's trying. I'm like, don't, no, absorb it. She's healed. And he wasn't sure. He's like, is it real? Is it real? Or is she? And he had to even wait till the next day for her to come up and hug us and thank us. And I'm whole. I'm whole. I'm healed. She had no fever, no sickness at all at that point, from then on point on. And I'm not talking about sicknesses I have a cold or I have a belly ache or anything like that, which is, that's important healings too. But she was in need of medical attention. She was weak. She couldn't move. She was sweating. Her whole face was her skin's clammy, her face, she wasn't good at all.
Out there, he's dying.
She was in dire straits.
Stuff like that, a lot more where there's a lot more medical care around here.
Yeah, there's nothing there. We didn't have anything for her. It was God or nothing. And so, I don't know. As we went on, though, we saw many miracles. We saw God move in so many different ways, and so many people giving their life to Christ, and it kind of just created almost I don't want to say a model necessarily, but it created an understanding of the way Pygmies work and the way the Bantus interact with them. So I was invited back to the university, of this Sangu, this man, and I told them there, I said, we're going to fund 1 year salary for a missionary to live among them, because y'all have missionaries here. Whoever you pick out, that missionary man and his family, we're going to fund for that missionary to go into Kuka and live in Kuka, teach them the Bible, live among them, work together, live together, pray together, disciple and train. that was what I wanted to do, just as a trial. And so going back into this seminary, there's a lot of people in the seminary. I'm thinking there was, if I had to say, I'd say a couple hundred young men and young women that lived on this big property. Nothing fancy at all. When I say seminary, I'm talking like bamboo kind of huts mostly. They had a couple buildings with metal on them, maybe here and there. It was not much of that at all. Very, very humble. And he allowed me to preach to him and do whatever. And now in this denomination, I'm not sure their doctrinal, belief system or whatever, but as I was taking these young men into the jungle with us, they all were seeing healings. They were all seeing deliverances. They were seeing, like demons manifest and then coming out. Like they were seeing these type of things. And so I didn't know what they believed before, whatever, but I knew they were on board with what we were doing, that seeing that this is God, that God's healing and delivering people, and the gospel's being preached and people are coming to Christ. And so I felt like I had a lot of liberty at the school to say whatever it is that I wanted to say. And so when Jacob and I both had an opportunity to preach. And when I preached, like the Spirit came over me, and the overall message was who can I send? Who'll fill in the gap? Who's going to go and preach to them? They're animals. They're animals to these people. Are they animals? Or do they have a soul like you and me? Is their blood the same red? Are they made from the same Adam and Eve seed that you and I are made from? Do they not know 6,000 different plants that they can identify, each one knowing how that they interact and how to use them properly? They're different. Who can leave their comforts? Who can leave the life that they know and go into the jungle? And I'm saying maybe 12 people, around a dozen people, stood up and raised their hand. I'm like, who's going to go? Who can go? Who can give their lives? And around a dozen people stood up and said they'd give their lives as missionaries to go in and to live among the Pygmies. And so,
out of a couple hundred.
Yeah. And so to me, that was huge. And I didn't know till I went back again the next time, and I got to see these men and women were actually doing the work. They were living in among them. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to work with this denomination anymore because the missionary project that I had established, to fund them to train and disciple in the heart of Kuka, the money didn't get spent for that. They ended up allowing those funds to be used for something completely different. And actually, they sent somebody for a couple of weeks, and then that was it. And they didn't send them into Kuka. They sent them down to the riverbank, right, on the edge where they're not in the uncomfortable place, So, so they didn't fulfill it. And then, so this missionary or this minister, this pastor, and the leader of this denomination, he contacts me through my contact in California in the capital Kinshasa and wants more money. And I'm not giving him any more money. He wasn't faithful with what we gave him. He didn't fulfill it because I had a very clear meeting with him. I had a lot of the men around us. I had my translator and I said, these funds are specifically for this task. I'm going to be checking on it. We're not going any further if we can't build trust. Can I trust you with this? Are you going to use these funds for this? It's for a missionary to sustain their family. They need it in quarterly or weekly. I don't know how, but sustain them and their needs in the force. That's all it's for. It's not for anything else. And they didn't do that. So that's what I found is I was struggling because I couldn't find somebody that I could partner with that would be faithful. Time and time and time and time and time again. I can't tell you how many times I worked with these pastors in the DRC up in the jungles that were not honest. They didn't have integrity. They weren't dependable, and they really were interested in having a comfortable life. That was their interest. And so even after God would speak to them, like he said that God showed up in a dream and told him that he's supposed to start evangelizing the Pygmies. Now, maybe that was fulfilled in the men, and women that he had at his training center. I mean, it's really confusing, right? Because there's a lot of good that people can do, but then you can see how it just degrades in an area, and it was with money. And so that's pretty much the theme. I was having trouble finding partners in the jungle area to help me go in and do these missions, and then for them to stay and disciple and train, because that's a big part of it. Yeah, we can go in and, just do a big Hail Mary and, watch God move powerfully, watch healing, signs, wonders. The gospel's preached powerfully. They can see that these Americans, what are you doing? Why are you here? I'm here for you. I'm here to proclaim the gospel to those that never heard the name Jesus. It's a powerful thing that happens. But then after we leave and go back to America, well, who is going to finish the job? Who is going to go? Well, the Pygmies aren't going to go sit in the churches. And it's not even healthy for them because, like I said, they're being enslaved. They're being taken advantage of. They don't know how to count money, and they don't know how to read, and they're so vulnerable. And so they're the safest, staying within the realm that they're comfortable with, the realm that they know, inside the forest. So,
has there been any of the Pygmy people that have kind of taken on that type of thing where they're going to start actually leading, or like being their own ministers?
Yeah, so that could lead me up into the next trip, I guess. Okay. So we left on a pretty exciting note. We left commissioning this pastor to send in a year-long missionary into the forest where we'd just done our deep forest mission. We preached to these young men and women, and we have a dozen people now ready to partner with us into the missions in the Congos. And so I felt like we were in a pretty good place when we went back home. But then after that time went by, and as we're checking back up on them and find out that they didn't allocate the money in the right places and the job didn't get done, I wasn't going to partner with them again. And so I knew I was going back, but I didn't know who to go to now because, okay, that was my one contact. That's who I had to help me get in there. And now who is there? So I'm in prayer. I'm like, God, you've called me to these Pygmies. You've called me to the lowest of the low, the poorest of the poor. How do I reach them? How do I finish the work that you gave me to do? And while I was in prayer, I saw a vision. And it took me back to a time in the Congo where I had this encounter with this man that was half Pygmy, because you asked to have the Pygmies taken the gospel to their own people. He's half Pygmy, half Bantu. So he's kind of like a bridge between the two people. And I met him, and you can't have trust for people right away, obviously, from my experience, because trust is definitely earned. Love is a given, but trust is earned. And I got a good feeling from him on our first meeting, but he said, thank you so much for coming to our people. This was on our way out from the mission we had just ran. And he said, thank you so much for coming to our people. He said, can you please stop at my house on your way home? He said, my wife is sick to death. And he said, could you just pray over? And he said, I'd be forever grateful. And I said, of course. And he said, I'm half Bantu, half Pygmy. And he said, my life is to help these people. I help them, on a daily basis. And, and I heard everything that he said, but there again, you don't know what to believe until you either know someone that they know or whatever. Everyone has to be vetted. And we're traveling back up toward the airport, the little tiny, bush airport. And on the way there, he has his wife. I guess he had moved her back to her parents' house or something. And he had a young bride. She was young. She was probably in her early 30s, early 20s, and she's probably 20 years younger than him. And this man's name was Pupa Sala, and his wife's name was Seraphine. And when I came in to the village where she was, I asked her. She was really weak, very pale, and she said, I've been bleeding, and I had a pregnancy. I'm pregnant, and I already lost one child, and now I'm bleeding again. And I was down at the hospital, and they did everything they could for me, and they sent me home, and I'm just she's basically hemorrhaging, and they couldn't get her to stop bleeding. And I don't know, I'm not a doctor, I can't tell you everything, but I know they just sent her home. She had been in and out of the hospitals for months, and so she was they didn't have anything else to do for her. They didn't have any more money, and so she was there just desperate. And so we laid our hands on her and we commanded healing in her body, and she was weeping, and she said she felt God touch her body. And so we left there, and we didn't know what had become of her. And as we were back, we got a report from Felix, and he said he had got a call from this man, and he says that his wife was fully restored, that after we left, that she went back to her work and the bleeding stopped and she was completely healed. And then not only that, but she also had the baby naturally, and the baby was healthy, and
whoa.
Yeah. And so they named this baby Davidson because we had went out of our way to pray for her. And so, while I'm in prayer back at home in the United States, in Ohio, I'm praying and I get a vision of Pupasala, and I said, Lord, who is it that we can partner with that can do the work? And I got a vision of Pupasala, and I saw him riding on his motorbike, and he was riding furiously, like Jehu or something. Like he was just furiously riding, and he was like intense. And he said, this man is already doing the work. Partner with this man. He will be an advocate for the mission I've called you to. So I called Felix in the Congo, and I said, Felix, I had a vision. I need you to get a hold of Pupasala, and I need you to get him to set up, a mission. We're gonna go, and he's gonna be at the helm of this thing. I want to know what he's been doing, and I want to know his vision, and I want us to work together. And so I gave him my vision to reach the unreached in the deepest parts, the deepest places, the farthest places. That was my vision, because what I felt like the Lord was doing is, and this is just my understanding, is that if we'll go so far and go so deep into the jungles, then they can reach out their back door to the Pygmies. If we're willing to go so far, just start out your back door. Just reach out to this people group that you're neglecting. They're all here because there's Christians there. It's just their mind's not right. There's a part in them that the love of God does not dwell. It's a bad culture there. It's a bad understanding. It's these people. It'd almost be like some Christians' view of homeless, maybe, like where they're too far gone, or come on this side of the street, kids. Like these people, like they're get on. It's just that it's that kind of viewpoint. And so when we came back into the Congo, this time we were picked up by Pupasala at the airport, at the Bush airport. And at the airport, he met us with all these people. And turns out that so many of the people that had been preached to at that seminary, they were part of the mission. They were there to see us. And they're like, we've been working in the jungle. We started a work here. We started a work there. We found out that all over through the jungles there was these little missions going on where they were living among the Pygmies, literally like life on life discipling them. And so it was mind blowing. Like we had literally seeing a difference being made by our little tiny loaves and fishes, And then so on the way there, like Pupasala was like loving on us and saying how my wife was healed, and she's restored. And so he wanted to take us to somewhere to show us something, and I didn't know what he wanted to show us, but this was the most like radical thing I'd ever seen in the Congo, because at this point I'd been going there quite a bit, and I noticed the theme is whatever we're willing to fund happens, but the moment we back out with funding, it kind of stops, so it's like they don't seem to be like involved in with their own blood, sweat, and tears as much, right? Like they're more looking for a way to be sustained, like an occupation, I'll be a minister if you'll fund it, right? That kind of thing. And so this really shifted the way that things were going before like that, where you have people asking you for something. he takes us to this location and he walks us up. And when we walk up to the location, he says, what I'm about to show you is because, do you remember when you came to our house and you prayed over my wife and she was healed? And we were like, of course. And he's like, and she's here now and she's restored, and here's my child, and this is the child, and like, I want you to hold him. And so I'm holding the baby and I'm with the healed wife, and then he says, I want to lead you to something. And so he takes us and leads us with a big crowd of people, and they're all singing and dancing, and I walk up, and then there's this church, and it's this big building that they built, and they said this church was built from the money from the Pygmies and the Bantus. It's a Pygmy Bantu church where everybody contributed after this healing. They said, this is the true God. If God can heal Seraphine when she was ready to die, then this is the true God. We'll serve this God. And so this whole church was built in honor of the God that healed Seraphine. And so I'm walking, I'm just crying, because I just like, unbelievable. Like, I'm seeing Pygmies playing drums with Bantus, and I'm seeing like this complete cultural, line is just completely crossed. And then he, Pupa Satellite, he's half Bantu and half Pygmy. And so I was really pleased with what I was seeing and experiencing. And I thought, well, this is quite a bit of fun. It had a metal roof. And there was a lot of resources that they'd put into it. And it's nothing like what we have here. I mean, maybe like some of the outdoor worship that we do, it just really proved, though, that God was putting his hand on this mission to the jungle, to the people of the Congo. And I would say that was the shift where I feel like we've got allies now. We've got men and women they're doing the work no matter what, and as we started going through the different parts of the jungle to get to where our destination, because you got to understand, on the way from the airport to where we're going is, I don't even know the amount of kilometers it is, but it's very deep and it's a big trip. We have to get in an SUV and we have to ride for days in an SUV. And this isn't a normal ride. When you get into this SUV, you're with a lot of hot, sweaty people. All your bags are in there. And then a lot of hitchhikers come on board too. Like, I'm going to help you cook, and, and I'm going to do this. I'll be the chef. And you end up like squished and people on your lap, and, a lot of smells that you really can't get outside of like not bathing for such an extended period of time, that like new types of smells are developed that like just immediately trigger gag reflexes. And like, so for days riding in this kind of vehicle with like, while you're pouring sweat for days, oh, and so all your personal space, usually I get space. Nobody's touching me. Like, my wife and I like to touch. We touch, our legs touch and our arms touch, and, we hold hands. But I don't really like holding hands with men, and then especially their legs on my legs, especially their sweat on me, and, just merging in this kind of a intimate way with other human beings for days and days, and being like slammed onto each other, and like there's just potholes everywhere, and you'll be going down, these dirt paths, and you'll come to a river and there's no bridge there, or the bridge is there but it's like one of the logs are gone, and so you have to like go and try to get logs and try to make this crossing happen with the SUV. And I mean, they make you get all out of the car, so there's not as much weight, and sometimes it goes off of the logs and then they're stuck in the river, and you'll just set up a camp right there on the side of the road. And what I notice is no catastrophe ever goes to waste. There's always somebody coming by on a bike, a motorbike, or walking. I mean, people are walking for days. 30 miles somebody will walk in a day. They'll walk that far just to bring their crops from one place to another. I mean, how hard they are and tough, and the way they live, you'll never complain again. It just changes everything about the way that you see life as. I mean, coming back from this kind of environment, I mean, I remember coming back so many times and just weeping coming out of the airport from Cincinnati in Ohio there. I like driving by gas station after gas station, hotel, travel centers and restaurants everywhere, and like there's bathrooms and toilet paper. You can literally go in and they have toilet paper there that you can use and wipe with. It's free. They have it on a roll and it's just there. The bathroom's like wiped and clean. There's like, and it flushes and it's like, wow. And literally if you want a water, you could go up anywhere and say, can I have a glass of water? And they won't even charge you for it. Like you can get water. You know what I mean? And it's like how wealthy we are and how unbelievably spoiled in every way, shape, and form we are. And it's just like this kind of reality when it sets on you, you can't be the same anymore, and you have to really check yourself, make sure you don't get like critical of people, and their like normal Americanized thinking, because like it's like they don't know how good they have it. They don't know just how spoiled they are. But anyway, along these roadsides, just headed into the jungle, into these pygmy encampments that we have knowledge of through somebody that's in the vehicle, somebody that's in the convoy. Like somebody will know where it is. I know where it is. You know what I mean? And you're just believing that they know where it is. And you're believing that somehow we're going to make it there. And like and then, the tire blows out, right? And then this is so often. Now the tire's blown out. And, we're on the roadside now, and now somebody on the roadside, you're crossing paths, and now you're leading them to Jesus. Sometimes it'll break out in a big baptismal service right there at the river. We'll just start leading people to the Lord and baptizing people in the river. I mean, you just don't. It's full-time evangelism. You're never like, oh, we were trying to get here, and then now this thing. It's not. Like you start seeing like the Holy Spirit, little happenstances, like every catastrophe and every breakdown and every blown tire, every time you're stuck in the sand or stuck in the mud, every time you're held up at either gunpoint or just because of their position, you can't go through. You have to stay a night in a village that you planned on crossing right through, and they won't let you. And they're being so controlling and such a jerk, right? But something here is going to happen. God's going to do something. And there's times that nothing's happened, but I would say the majority of the time, nothing goes to waste. Like there's somebody there that needs to hear the gospel. And time and time again, I can see that, if we'll let him, he'll spend us, he'll spend us on what's the most precious to him, a human soul. And he'll go to any extent to touch that human soul. And so, just days and days, though, of driving through. And then, you can only drive so long. You only have so much fuel. You have to stop different places. Sometimes you're getting fuel in this, like, jerry can that's in the middle of the jungle. It'll just be, like, a little stand on the side of the road, And it's just a little shack for real. It looks like an outhouse. And they have fuel. And so that's the fuel stop. And it's like, where did you get the gas from? Like, how long has it been there? Where did it come from?
Like what's it contained in? Is it like gas cans?
Like a jerry can. Like I think they're cans that oil comes in, maybe like oil from China or from somewhere like that, like vegetable oil. I think it comes in these yellow, orangish cans with red lids. They're really common, and so those cans are recycled, used for diesel fuel, and so you'll buy diesel fuel somewhere like that, and you're just kind of like collecting things as you go, like a goat here, a pig here, a chicken there, some monkey there, some caterpillars here, whatever you can get. And then all of a sudden, you'll end up in a huge village that's massive, and they may have used to have a airport or you can see the old missions that are abandoned from the past. 20 some years ago, 30 probably now, there was a highly evangelized area from the United States and Europe. The Mennonites made a huge mark in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, but now they're just empty. And now what's left is the people that was led to the Lord and kept leading people to the Lord. And there's a lot of stale Christianity, a lot of just religion. Some of the pastors aren't even born again. They're just live in a culture, having an occupation, having their value and their identity and what they do, and so we're coming in there not knowing if they're, a powerful man or woman of God that's been holding down the fort, or whether they're fake and phony. They could be a witch doctor that's just, working at the church. You don't know what you're dealing with. But, I remember one night we had to stop to rest, and the place that we stopped to rest at, we did a huge outreach. And when we do outreaches, what I take these little projectors. It's about the size of a cell phone, about that big right there. And the projector, we put a big sheet, up, and then we project into it. And the sheet's thin enough to where you can see it from both sides. And so you can gather hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people together. I mean, I don't know. We probably had close to 1,000 people at a time before that we've hosted. And we have these speakers, these different Bose speakers that we'll put out, JBL speakers that we charge from little solar power, stations, and these are all battery powered items that we charge from the sun. There's no power out there until you go to a village where they have maybe a diesel engine that they start up to charge things, or run a cell phone tower. You'll have that every now and then. You have a cell phone signal, in the middle of nowhere, because they started a generator and it has this cell phone tower, and and it like powers it up, and you can actually call somebody in the United States. But then if the diesel engine goes out, then it's just dead. Now you have no signal. There's nothing, right? And so they might run out of diesel fuel for who knows how long, or if they can't afford it or whatever. And so there will be no, because there's companies that are making money. It's like, if you're a businessman, if you could set up cell phone towers, then you can charge people for cell phones. And you wouldn't believe it, but people will find a way to make money to get a phone. Most people have a phone there, some type of cell phone. And so,
really,
yeah,
most people,
a lot of people, maybe, I don't know if most, but a lot of people have cell phones. And so if they can keep the fuel out there for the cell phone towers, people will buy the cell phones and pay for the credits. They buy credits and they put credits on their phone, right? And so that's how they communicate. But when we set up these outreaches, we play the Jesus movie. It's like a 3-hour movie,
I didn't know it was that long. 3 hours?
Yeah, it's like 3 hours long. Yeah, I pretty much know every single scene of it. I've seen it so many times, and it's all in Lingala, because that's the closest language you can get to the Pygmies language, and then almost all Bantus know Lingala. Almost everyone knows Lingala. It's nothing for them to know 3 or 4 languages, really, because a lot of times they'll know French if they went to school in the cities. Then they'll know Lingala because it's the state language, and then they may know like Congo, or it could be Swahili, or there's many languages and dialects out in the region. And they might, one minute they're talking Lingala and then they switch into French, and then they're switching to Congo, and it's like, and it's like, it's interesting they switch languages while they're speaking to articulate what they want to say. And so I'll be like, what did they say? He's like, I don't know. He just switched to Congo. I don't know that language. And I'm like, what in the world? It's like, so they switch back. It's interesting how, they're hodgepodge of tribes and, like little clans. But one thing I will mention on the way into our targeted deep forest area, we set up this big outreach, and we had a very large crowd of people there, and they were packed in, and we were projecting the sound as far as we could. You can't carry much, because you're going into the deep jungle, and you have to charge it on batteries. So the models of some of these huge outreaches that you see, if you see people doing work in the Congo, or you see people doing work in these other areas, they're usually not going out into these areas. These areas are further out. They take days and days and sometimes a week to get there. So like, you're not going to see like a huge, stage and all that. You can't even get semis to where we're going to do a stage. It's not going to happen. And so one of the times I remember after we played the Jesus movie, we then asked them to bring all the sick, bring any of the sick, bring anyone that is feeling oppressed by evil spirits, because they believe in evil spirits in Africa. They have witch doctors. It's not a foreign idea at all. Here we call it bipolar or schizophrenic, or we'll name it something. And I'm not saying the mental conditions don't exist. That's not for me to say it. What I'm saying, we just label it as something that we know scientifically, some type of psychology is explaining that, like, these oppressions. In Africa, they're like, no, it's an evil spirit. That's just what it is. No, somebody, they picked up a demon from here. They picked up some kind of evil spirit from there, and that's just the very first go-to. They're very aware of the spirit realm. And so when we asked them to bring all the sick up, we began to lay hands on people, and person after person, we seeing healings. People healed from, issues in their legs, pains in their bodies, fevers, malaria, all these different things. But in that particular night, I recall them bringing one little child up that had never spoke or heard in their entire life. And this child was, they were young, but they were old, and like maybe 8 years old or something, I'm guessing. And we laid hands on that child, and Jesus healed that child. And that child, for the first time in its ever life, spoke in its native tongue, spoke mama, mama, mama.
Whoa.
And it heard. That child heard, and that child spoke. That mother just began to weep. She just lost it, weeping, crying, rejoicing, praising God. And then the whole village went berserk. And then they're like, what? Like they people started coming in droves wanting prayer, and it was on, and all the adversity during all this, because I guess in the night while we were sleeping, somebody told the military we were there and that we were up to no good, and they sent a bunch of troops up, armed troops, to come and arrest us, because they said that we were there, doing, like, starting trouble. So we didn't know it, but during the middle of the night, our encampment got surrounded by soldiers, with armed soldiers, with AK-47s and grenades, whatever else they had with them. But they were there for business. And, all it takes is one drunken soldier to start firing a shot, and some misunderstandings happen. But I guess in the middle of the night, one of the men there was like negotiating with them and reasoning with them and trying to explain our mission and our heart. And I guess the people that had been touched by God, they were coming to intercede for us. And so they were like, no, you're not going to mess with these people. And, and so while we're sleeping, here people are going to bat for us, so it's like, you just never know what's going to happen, And so
that's probably why, like, in the very beginning, you were talking about the people being so passionate and just the way they speak and everything, because it's big life. I mean, there's the ups and downs that you just described are really pretty wild.
Yeah, it really is, and I'm kind of getting more deep into the jungle, because all these things I'm talking about, they're leading up to the next mission that we were on. And like I said, each mission has a target. Typically it's a targeted area, and when on this one particular mission, and I'm thinking of, on the way into that mission, we encountered more people along the way, and I saw the most rare thing I ever saw. I saw a Bantu, besides Pupasala, that was caring for the Pygmies. He was a minister, and he was young, and he had started a little church inside the forest. And I was so touched by it. I was suspicious of it at first until I heard from everyone, even the Pygmies. They were all like, no, he's a great guy. He helps us. He helps us with our food, and he helps us with, and he's... I'd never seen somebody that was laying their life down for the Pygmies like this man was. And so I just wanted to have a meeting with him. So I asked for a meeting with him after we did an outreach, because that night we did the Jesus film again on this village. It was overlooking the Ubangi River again, and we had a lot of people gathering there. People were being healed and delivered. And I had a really crazy night the night before. I was sleeping in my tent, and this huge storm comes through with these like monsoon rains. And next thing you know, a river literally came under my tent, and I began to float in my tent, and it's like washing me away, and I'm yelling, and I'm like, wahoo, and I'm yelling over to Brad Fisher. He's over in his tent, and I'm like, Brad, there's a river under. He's like, I know. He's like, I'm trying to hang on. He's like, water's coming in my tent, and and I'm just holding on, and I'm on an air mattress, like a little like blow up air mattress, like a Sea to Summit air mattress, and I have my tent staked in, and what happened was the bottom of the tent came up, and it's like, it's literally a raft. Without that air mattress, I would have been down in the water, but like there's like just a whole river that has developed underneath of me. And in the morning, I had to ride this thing out. It was really intense, and I had to hold the tent poles, to keep it from blowing over, because the winds were like laying it flat, and just lightning and thunder, and I just started singing real loud, like my anchor holds, just having fun with it, because I'm just like, what do you do? Like, I'm not in control right now. And we just rode the storm out, and finally after the storm, the next morning we looked, and it's just like just debris everywhere, like all under my tent, like huge logs and everything, and just debris everywhere. It was a huge flood had gone through our encampment, and I guess it was in the wrong spot where water come down through. And I didn't know that.
Crazy story.
Yeah.
You're singing.
Yeah. It was a good memory to have. And after that, we had a night of like radical healings. I had so many healings this night. There was people that had every kind of ailment you can think of, and like healing after healing after healing. We had so many consistent healings that night, and they just kept coming and coming and coming. And it's kind of hard for the guys, because there's a lot of like hurry up and then wait. Yeah, like intensely moving and all this like adrenaline and all these like precarious situations, and then you're just sitting waiting in a village like all day long, just sitting there under a tree, just sweating, doing nothing, like nothing to do. And so they get tired, and so we're watching a 3-hour Jesus movie. They've been sitting all day waiting, and they're just bored out of their mind. And here, now like it's nighttime, and the nightlife's coming out, starting to serenade you, and they're getting tired, and they're falling asleep in their chairs, the Americans, and after the 3-hour movie, it's time to minister, so I'm like, hey guys, wake up, it's time, it's go time, and and they're so groggy and just exhausted from travel, and then sitting around, and just all the different elements and the different food and everything. And they would begin to pray, though, and God would begin to move, and he would heal people, and you'd just see the energy come into him, as God began to touch people's bodies, and people will give themselves to the Lord. And because, when they see that God is a God that heals and a God that delivers, they see that like, this isn't just an idea, this isn't just a belief, this isn't a prayer, this is a person. This God, he's here with us, And so in that village the next day before we left, I asked for a meeting with that guy that had been creating that little forest church, for the Pygmies. And he began to tell his story to me, and he told me, he said, I have a wife. She's not here with me. These 2 children I'm raising myself. And he said, my parents, they're old, they're trying to help me, but my wife is gone. And he began to weep. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, here in Congo, you have to pay a dowry for your wife, and you can get your wife, but if you don't pay the dowry, the family can actually come back and take your wife back, and they against your will, and it's like legal. And he said, and I don't have the money, and I've done the best I could, and I couldn't get her back. And so I asked how much money that he needed to redeem her. And so I talked with the guys, and we had a little conversation. I believe it was Garrett and Brad, and we talked about it, and we said, we need to redeem this wife. We need to buy her back. And so we told him, we said, hey, you're the only person we've met besides People Salad that is actually reaching out to the Pygmies from a pure heart. And I said, today you're going to reap what you've sown, because we're going to redeem your wife. We're going to pay for her in full. I was like, you're getting your wife back. And we presented him with the money. And he just wept and praised God. His whole family got on their knees with the money in their hand, and they're crying, God, we thank you, God of Abraham. And, and they're just worshiping God on their knees. And we're all just like crying, watching them rejoice. And, I got a picture like a year later of him with his wife. Because like he went right away and redeemed his wife, and their family was reunited, and so I just saw how just a simple act of obedience, us just going, like all the fruit that's produced along the way, and it just time and time again,
Yeah, so many things have been changed and affected. And it was just God leading you. You didn't hook up with a big organization that had your path all set out for you over there or anything like that.
Well, I would have liked that. I mean, that would have been handy.
Right.
Even if somebody goes with us now, it isn't really that way. We ask a lot of people when they go with us. Like there's a pretty high cost that they have to pay. To go suffer through this. It's fast paced. It's a high risk, high reward kind of work. So, yeah. But,
it's cool. I feel like it's kind of went just perfect how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
Good place to stop.
Yeah, I agree.
And we'll probably do some more again soon.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's such a blessing. I don't even know. I'm going to be having like dreams. I'm going to have all kinds of things after sitting here getting to listen to all this stuff in detail. I'm pretty pumped.
Yeah, and there's some pretty exciting stories that have pretty wild stuff. We'll talk a bit more about like kind of that cost that people have paid, and like kind of what it looks like to go through the jungle. There's a lot of things I'll talk about with that, and some of the different things that we like, some more storms that we went through, and just different things, and how God moved and showed up again and again, and kind of just showed you, I brought you here, and I made a way, where there's no way. So, yeah, I'm excited to share some of those stories.